Looks like we have some host. Can you please play the video? Otherwise, you will need to skip it.
The following message is best viewed on an oscilloscope.
Okay, I think we can start now after this energizing start. So welcome again to this diversity and inclusion session. Thank you very much for attending this morning session. And we will start the session with a talk by Hannah on diversity and inclusion activities in the Belle 2 collaboration. So please, Hannah, if you can share your slide. Just let me to remind that you should keep mute during the presentation, and that please at the end, if you want to make questions, just raise the hand and we will allow you to do the questions. You have 20 minutes plus
Can
5
you see my
questions.
screen?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay. Hi, everyone. So my name is Hannah Wakeling, she, her, they, them pronouns, and I'm a graduate student at McGill University. I'm very happy to be here today to present the first ICHEP talk on diversity and inclusion activities within the Belle 2 collaboration. Specifically today, I shall introduce our collaboration and some statistics taken from our membership registrations. I'll then present some results on our membership survey taken in 2018. And I'll present some actions Belle 2 has been taking to promote diversity and inclusion. And then I'll discuss some initiatives and goals that Belle 2 and KEK hope to implement in the near future. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge that my university, McGill, is situated on unceded Kanien'kehá:ka traditional territory. This means that this land was taken, not paid for or given by the Kanien'kehá:ka people. So through this acknowledgement, I hope to respect the diverse Indigenous peoples connected to this territory on which I work and live in today. Far from Montreal and the Kanien'kehá:ka territory, the Belle 2 collaboration is hosted at the KEK High Energy Research Organization in Tsukuba, Japan. And as you can see from our map of institutions, we are many people from many cultures, and we come together to do great physics. In fact, we have over 1,000 members in 4 different continents. It should be noted here that we work in parallel and in cooperation with the KK organization, and with diversity and inclusion actions, they are very on board with us. Being such a large and diverse collaboration encourages us to have a code of conduct in which we describe how we expect our members to conduct themselves. We included our first iteration of the code of conduct in our bylaws in October 2017 and updated them in 2018. The code of conduct enshrines principles related to research practice and also fostering a diverse and inclusive collaboration. And it reads as follows. The Belle 2 collaboration is committed to fostering an open, diverse, and inclusive working environment that nurtures growth and development of all, and believes that an array of values, interests, experiences, and cultural viewpoints enriches our learning at our workplace. Thus, members shall not engage in violent, harassing, sexist, racist, or discriminatory behavior. I'd like to note here that we currently reiterate this at our triannual collaboration meetings, at a diversity plenary, and at our diversity meetings. The diversity plenary is usually presented by one of our Belle 2 diversity officers. The positions of diversity officer were created in October 2018, and currently it is Kei Kinoshita and Matt Barrett. Their positions exist to promote an inclusive environment within the collaboration, provide a safe and confidential point of contact for any collaborator to report any issues, particularly those related to discrimination, bullying, or harassment within the collaboration. They also exist to ensure that persons from marginalized groups are appropriately considered for positions of responsibility in the collaboration and are supported in their careers. And finally, to encourage and publicize the collaboration's events and efforts promoting equity. Belle 2 based these guidelines on the LHCb experience of creating the Early Career Gender and Diversity Office. And at each diversity meeting and plenary, these are stated too. So next, I'd like to bring your attention to our collected collaboration demographics. So as you may or probably know, the gender gap in physics is disappointingly one of the highest in science. The gender gap at Belle 2 is sadly normal with respect to this. So here I present the gender of collaborators by year from 2011 to 2019. Though our collaboration size increases, the percentage of women within the collaboration is only increasing slightly each year. So from 2011 to 2019, we've only seen an increase from approximately 12.2% to 15.6%, which is statistically significant, though if we use the average from these two numbers and only increase our percentage of women approximately 0.54% each year, it would take about 86 years to reach this 50% line put in for an example of population representation. At this point, I'd also like to acknowledge the issues often perpetuated in the form of data taking with respect to a gender binary. So Belle 2's current membership form allows for the choice of female, male, other, and not set. In the following plots, we combine other and unspecified into one category to keep anonymity. So for example, to avoid outing someone's gender against their will. And finally, I'd like to note that in our collaboration, we encourage everyone to use a colorblind friendly color scheme for plots. So for the rest of the plots in this talk, this is implemented. So I would like to do a quick shout out here to specifically to Jeanette Delamotte for the bar charts, and she will be presenting in the poster session. Next, I'd like to discuss this plot of the gender of collaborators by region, sorry. Here we have grouped the data by the selected regions to again ensure anonymity. Another reason that we've used these categorizations is to be able to compare to similar plots, for example, by atlas. As Japan alone contributes 16% of the people in the collaboration, we've also separated Japan from the Asia region for clearer representation in the plot. So the regions here are defined as Japan, Asia excluding Japan, Eastern Europe, the Mediterranean, Northern America, Northern Europe, and the Southern Hemisphere. One takeaway from this plot is the comparison between two regions or countries with similar representation within the collaboration, comparing Japan, which represents 16.23% of the collaboration, to Northern America, which represents 16.91% of the collaboration. We can see that Japan has a higher representation of women than Northern America. 15.57% compared to 9.09% respectively. This is a telling statistic that though everyone has a way to go for gender representation to match that of population, Northern America is even further behind in this. Next, I'd like to talk about gender of collaborators by position. So looking at this plot, you can see that the percentage of women drops as their career progresses from postgraduate to permanent faculty in a statistically significant way. This shows that we're not exempt from the coined leaky pipeline effect, but perhaps looking at this very optimistically, there is potential for change within a short period of time. With more emphasis being put on diversity and inclusion in the recent years and more efforts being made, perhaps we can expect to see an improvement by the next ICHEP, fingers crossed. Finally, the last plot I'll be showing from the registration data is the percentage of women's recognized involvement within the collaboration by year. In the plot, we have this orange line, which displays the percentage of all members, and these green and red lines displaying the percentage of women in various levels of leadership roles within the collaboration. We also have this blue line, which is the percentage of conference talks labeled as delivered talk external. And we have this yellow line displaying the fraction of plenary talks at Belle 2 collaboration meetings given by women, marked as the delivered plenary internal. Given that these internal talks are often given by group chairs and the percentage of these that are female, especially in the earlier years of this plot, is low, this plot is not surprising. I'd also like to acknowledge that the external talk line is notably choppy, and this is because we're quite a young collaboration and the number of external talks we give only really started to increase from 2017. This plot does show that there is an overall upwards trend, which is good, but this trend is not enough to reach proportional gender representation of our collaboration in the near future. In this next section, I'd like to discuss a membership survey conducted in 2018. So this survey was inspired by a survey done by the LHCb and is a climate survey asking for qualitative and qualitative data. It took approximately 6 months to get 240 responses from the collaboration, which is less than 25% of our members. So this data, even before considering the phrasing of our questions, is implicitly biased. Implicitly biased, but not useless. So before I move on, I'll point out that students were particularly elusive when trying to get them to respond. Reasons for this could include lack of motivation or even the fact that the survey was quite long, worry of identifiability, or reluctance to give information via Google Forms. Finally, though, we closed the survey, and these were our population representations, which, if taken with a large pinch of salt, is quite similar to our collaboration registration data. So why did we decide to take this data, and also why should your organization do it too? In last year's Nature article, Data on Women in Physics, they stated that collecting high quality data is the way forward to creating an inclusive workplace. It enables us to learn where our issues lie. So after Belle 2 took this data, we learned that, for example, approximately 25% of those that took this survey have at some point in their career withdrawn from consideration for a leadership role at Belle 2, implicitly or explicitly, because of the impact it would have on their family life. This shows us that Belle 2 could work on being more inclusive towards family life. With this, we encourage your organization to take some data too. This was just one of the many telling trends we found in our membership survey, and we can now use this to improve our membership experiences of inclusion. I will note that it is very important that these surveys are worded very carefully. So for example, the wording for this question I've shown is subjective, which must be taken into consideration. So moving on to the next section, Belle 2 is active on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We use these platforms to raise awareness of diversity and inclusion events, such as International Women's Day, LGBT STEM Day, and Colorblind Awareness Day. On the right here, you can see some examples of posts we have made, which did get a lot of engagement. These posts are posted in both Japanese and English. And if you wish, you can follow us on these platforms using the handle @Belle2Collab. And if you're interested, there's even a KK Physics YouTube channel with a mixture of Japanese and English videos. We're working on more posts in the future, perhaps a series of posts on collaborators, so their position, passions, and experiences. And we also hope to post quite soon regarding self-care during COVID-19, and also to post a reiteration of our diversity statement. In 2019, Belle 2 became an official supporter of LGBT STEM Day through unanimous endorsement of our institutional board. We are the only supporter based outside of Europe and North America, depending on how you count ICHEP and DES. And we again posted in Japanese and English. You can see the Japanese post on the bottom right here. We also changed our profile picture for the day to this logo in the top right-hand corner. and also made a profile picture skin available on Facebook for everyone to add to their personal pictures. We would like to encourage other research institutions to support Ready for LGBT STEM Day this November, and we will be actively encouraging Japanese research institutions to do so. Something important to note here, as was mentioned in yesterday's diversity session, is safety. We had a collaborator voice a legitimate concern about having a photo alongside the rainbow logo in the same post that could be understood as promoting LGBTQ+, and could be detrimental for the safety or situation of participants originating from countries with laws against LGBTQ actions. Belle has tried to learn from this, and now we actively check ourselves and our posts on social media. Belle has also been working on making our language inclusive. In general, we wish to avoid anything that might cause distress or feelings of inclusion to our collaborators. In particular, we are considering words used with severe racial overtones. Our computing and software groups have taken steps to remove or phase out the use of the word slave from our code. This has not been straightforward due to external software use, but we have been able to remove it from our build machines for new operating systems from EL8 onwards. So here we are phasing it out. We are also phasing out the word master, again with some resistance due to external technologies, but this situation is now changing. For example, GitHub are replacing their use of the word master, and we are revisiting this issue. I'd like to point out here that it is possible for you to change this yourself. So through a simple search, you can find instructions and make your own repositories more inclusive. These are just some words that are problematic, but there are many more words used in code and in physics that can be made more inclusive. For example, changing blacklist and whitelist simply to deny list and allow list. But there's much more that can be done. So as mentioned by Clemencia yesterday, Belle completed a physics run from February to July this year, and we had to rapidly change our plans due to COVID-19. So you can see the talk by Kodai Matsuoka for more details. Even with everything, we were still able to continue collecting data and actually broke the world's instantaneous luminosity record, thanks to the hard work of local and remote workers. This strain, though, needs to be acknowledged. Our shifter had to manage with one local and one remote shifter, an accelerator liaison, and a safety shifter. Only the people based at KEK were allowed to do local shifts, so extra burden was put on these people. Members had to do a much higher number of shifts than expected, and this was particularly difficult for people with dependents, such as family in Tsukuba. And even people scheduled to be at KEK for part or all of the run had to decide last minute whether to stay at KEK or return to their institutes or home countries. There was definitely social isolation felt by people stuck at the lab. They were often many time zones away from friends and family. And Belle did try to alleviate some of the stress in the form of snacks and ready meals to show appreciation for shifters, and to also increase safety and reduce stress by mitigating the need to go to supermarkets during the pandemic. We also held some remote social events, for example, an end of run party on Zoom to celebrate our work and boost morale. The Belle collaboration meeting was held in late June completely remotely. The only other time this happened was in 2011 after the Great East Japan earthquake. As with any multi-continental collaboration, meetings can often fall at unsociable hours and may be more of a burden for those with dependents. Belle recorded our plenaries and some other meetings, and some meetings were split into 2 sessions to allow presenters to choose a friendlier time slot. But even with these considerations, the issues cannot be fully ameliorated. So something this pandemic, as discussed yesterday, could do, and is food for thought, is allow for re-examining our organization of meetings. If remote meetings can be streamlined, perhaps we should consider increasing the number of meetings that are held remotely. They can allow for more accessibility if handled well, for example, through less travel and therefore less costs for the individual or group. And as a bonus, less environmental impact. So Belle will be taking this into consideration over the coming months. Finally, I shall talk about the initiatives at the KEK laboratory, in which KEK is very receptive and dedicated to any issues that come to light. So for instance, the Belle Secretariat worked to make childcare easier to find, as it has been historically difficult to find in Japan. Belle KEK is working on improving bathroom accessibility. For example, it has improved the bathroom provision for women in the dormitory and is working on improving the situation in experimental areas. And also there has been a request submitted by the International Board of Belle for gender-neutral bathroom by our control room, which seems to have gone down well, though COVID has delayed the process of this. Belle members help proofread Japanese to English translations, as often translations or cultural connotations evolve quicker than the KEK document revisions, and there may be archaic or outdated terms used. Belle has asked external food providers for more inclusive food options for dietary restrictions and requirements, though there is pushback there as these meals generally do not sell as well, so it's not profitable for them. And finally, we have implemented colorblind friendly screens in our control room, which has been a great success. We would like to continue raising awareness within the collaboration through more social posts, emails, and normalizing making things accessible. So for example, by always encouraging colorblind friendly plots, or for example, keeping camera on when speaking in video conference calls. We'd like to raise awareness of unconscious biases. Maybe we can provide links to training or courses on identifying these biases. We'd like to be more visible within the collaboration. We aim to have diversity topics mentioned at the beginning of meetings and workshops. Finally, we'd like to encourage COVID-19 and video conferencing best practices. I've taken some notes from yesterday's session, but some important points are: one, recommending to keep camera on, at least while talking, for facial cues. There's such a thing as Zoom fatigue, but particularly for those with, for example, dyslexia, autism, and ADHD, video conferencing is especially difficult without facial cues. And we'd also like to encourage understanding of mental health and normalize putting self-care first. So with that, in summary, I'd like to thank, and I'd like to say that Belle is trying to make the collaboration more inclusive and diverse by analyzing demographics, taking more membership surveys with qualitative and quantitative data, and working on making our environment an inclusive, safer place. But we would like to not only do this, we would like to work together with the wider physics community to build the better the field of physics as a whole. And we'd love to hear suggestions and share ideas. There's still a lot for all of us to do, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Hannah, for this nice talk and this Belle Diversity and Inclusion Office. So please, questions, Clara?
Thank you. Thank you, Hannah, for the really nice talk. What are colorblind friendly screens? I mean, I think I can guess, but I've never heard of them before.
So in our collaboration, we have basically lots of buttons and showing for like where errors are appearing, and before the errors and the safe colors were similar and could be confused by someone who is colorblind, but we just changed the color scheme to be easily readable. So it was the color scheme that we changed.
Great, thank you.
Uta?
Yes, Hannah, thank you very much for this inspiring talk. On page 12, you mentioned some days which are awareness rising days, like in International Women's Day. And I would like to add that there's a day in February 11, the International Day of Women and Girls in Science, which was adopted by the United Nations just 4 years ago. So it's a young awareness rising day, but you could include it if you have more activities, would like to have more activities. So this is February 11.
Yes, thank you. Actually, we did post for that. If you look in the top right hand corner, that was one I just didn't mention, but we are yeah, thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Jonas?
Just a quick question on page 9. So I looked at the orange, no, dark orange and green curve for leadership roles.
Yes.
Something seems to have happened between 2013 and 2015. Do you know what that was? Was there increased awareness, or was it just statistics? Things improved remarkably after that.
So I don't know the answer to that question, but perhaps Matt Barrett does.
Yeah, so in this plot, the number of senior leadership roles is rather small in terms of absolute numbers. So the jump from 2015 to 2016 is two people in absolute terms, two women obtaining senior leadership roles. And the number is currently 3.
I see. I also thought of the orange one, but there's really a nice steady increase. I mean, I was not so worried about the fluctuations. I thought I guessed that, but the orange course was also.
Yeah. So in 2017, we switched to a new membership management system, and 2017 was a transition year. So our data is somewhat incomplete. So this is most likely an artifact of that rather than any real effect.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, Giri, please.
Hello, I have a question about slide 7 about the geographical distribution of Belle collaborators. What are the exact definition of those regions, and particularly where Germany is included?
So I've included this in the backup slides. So Germany is included in Northern Europe.
Thank you.
Maybe can I have, here is Radek, can I have one more question about the plots for colorblind people? Actually, do you have some statistics? What's the fraction of these people in your collaboration, and what was their response to these plots?
So I don't have the statistics within our collaboration, but just for the general population, I think it is, perhaps Matt could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's about 5% for men, or 5 to 8% of men are affected by color blindness. But it's only 0.5% of women.
Yeah, so it's up to 8% for men. So I will just add, in terms of the response, we did receive some emails from people after we highlighted this. People who were colorblind themselves, or people who had family members who were colorblind and found the resources we shared very useful, and some resources such as for colorblind awareness in schools for children, which people hadn't seen before, and they found very useful sharing with their own families and friends.
Okay,
thanks.
Okay, I have a question. So also, if there are no any other question, related to the convener ships for the different groups, are you tracking, I mean, this diversity of each, are tracking the gender issue for convener ship? Do you have for the different groups, are you assuring that you have the corresponding gender representation? Do you know it? How you are treating this subject? That's what I would like to know. Or if you are.
I don't know the answer to that. Perhaps Matt, do you know?
Or do you plan? I mean, I don't know which is the status.
Yeah. So Hannah, if you go to the plot showing the trends. So the I think the next page.
Okay, sorry.
So the convenership of physics groups, I think, is what you were asking about, and that's included
exactly.
in the leadership roles plot.
Okay. Mm-hmm. But you are you are monitoring at present. You are monitoring the status, but you are not acting with the management or anything like that as other collaborations. I understand.
So at current, no, we are working on discussing with some of the institutional boards about how to ensure that we do give everyone equal consideration when we are appointing people, but we do not have a full system in place to do that yet.
Yeah, this was the question. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
I think that's linked to us trying to introduce workshops on implicit bias, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe you can have a look to what other collaborations are doing, because I think this is an interesting point, as you can in Atlas and LHCb or Alice. Okay, very good, very nice in any case. Any other question? If not, thank you very much again, Hannah. Really happy to hear about this. And then we move to the next talk. Just please let me remind you that you just say your name when you are asking questions, and if you could, I mean, if your network allows it, please turn on the video so then we can see you for the questions. And then the next talk, you can stop sharing, Hannah. And the next talk is the Port Humanitarian Hackathons at CERN for Diversity and Inclusion. It is Karolos or Carlos? How you pronounce it?
It is Karolos.
Karolos. It is Karolos. Okay.
But thanks for checking.
Okay. So thank you very much. And please, you have 20 minutes for your presentation.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. I hope you can see the slides. So I'm Karolos. I'm going to present our association, which is the Port Humanitarian Hackathon Organizing Association, based at CERN in Switzerland. So my day-to-day life is I'm a particle physicist working for the Atlas collaboration. But a couple of years ago, we met together with friends to actually start a completely new adventure, which I'm going to talk to you about today. It's a bit different from your usual diversity and inclusion talk you will have in the session, but nevertheless, it's full of diversity and inclusion. So I don't know if you've ever encountered this. Maybe some of you kind of have an idea of what it is. Maybe you don't. Looking a bit at the picture, you probably can guess that it involves some kind of event display, and indeed it is an event display slide from Delphi. It's an old film display, but what happened to it is it was attacked by mold. So slowly over the years, mold started eating up a bit the film and playing some effect, and that's why you see this visual effect there that, to me at least, is quite beautiful. So this is basically to show that really diverse effects can have a big role and change things fundamentally. And here in this case, it's also more important to say that the changes have to come naturally and slowly. Just for the record, the people who actually had these slides tried to reproduce the effect by doing this by hand, trying to apply chemicals and some other effects to the slides to try to reach the same effect. But really that didn't work. You really needed the mold and time to actually play its role. And this is why that we all think at the port that diversity is actually the only way we can actually put all the pieces together and get something new. And in particular, what we bring in the pool of diversity is also our approach to fundamental research as done in particle physics. So one thing that we typically do in physics, at least, is in the way we approach outreach, is we invite society to our comfort zone and we tell it, okay, this is what we do, this is how we do it, and then we say, okay, this technology that we had to develop for XYZ, we actually believe that it can help society in XYZ way. One example is, for example, the World Wide Web, which was first invented for internal purposes to share information, and then we found out it was also useful for the rest of society, and then it would be populating the world. Same, for example, for touchscreens that were first developed at CERN, and then in the app and ended up in being all of our handheld devices. What we do at the port is a bit different. We try to leave our comfort zone for other domains. So instead of inviting people to come and see what we do, we actually go to people and see how they're doing and what exactly they need in order to solve their challenges. And we bring our physicists, or not only physicists, you'll see in a minute, to the problem and really try to find solutions to their problems using the methodologies that we're used to, in particular, the rapid prototyping that we do in high energy physics. So this gives basically a whole new level at co-creation, where from supporters, where we just bring ideas, we are coming to other fields and challenge those fields and see, okay, this is how you do it, but what if you tried this? And we together try to build things up. We actually move fundamentally from our comfort zone to that of the stakeholders. So we really go and see what they're up to, what they're doing. And we move from understanding, so the scientist way of looking at the problem and trying to dissect it, to really experience together with a partner what exactly all this is about. And we bridge, therefore, domains and allow direct interaction with society. So the port is actually a not-for-profit association based in Switzerland. And together, we are organizing many events through the form of hackathons. I'll explain those in a minute. But our purpose is really to combine creative mind, initially from CERN, though this is less and less, and for not-for-profit organizations, and try to build interdisciplinary teams to work primarily on humanitarian technology, which we can try to use for the benefit of society. Primarily because since then, of course, our foundation is 6 years ago in 2014, we've gone a long way to try to improve things. And our motto is really to try to unite innovators to impact the future, but more importantly, act today, because there is no reason to wait for tomorrow to solve a problem that we can tackle today. So we all do hackathons, and I wanted to spend a few minutes to explain the concept for those who might not be so familiar. So hackathon is the concatenation of hacking, which is the action of tweaking things to see how they behave, to improve them or break them or whatever, and a marathon. So usually these are computer programmers and other people involved in software development who try to get together and collaborate intensively on software projects. But this is not a requirement. This concept can be, and is in fact often extended to handle all kinds of problems in all kinds of contexts. And actually, one doesn't even need to be a computer programmer to join some hackathons, although the vast majority of them, of course, are in software. So at the port, we do challenge-based innovation. We've organized over 20 events already, which covered about 70 challenges, from which you get a glimpse on the right, which we tackled throughout the year. And we've had the pleasure to welcome over 1,200 participants. This is for our physical events. I'll get to our online events in a minute. One thing to note is that we organize our own event, but we also collaborate with other partners to co-host events. So in terms of our public, we actually gather a diverse pool of participants from all over the world with varied background and skill sets. As you can see, the world map is decently covered, although we don't have every country represented. What we try to do is, because of the physicality of the events based in Switzerland, which is also a rather expensive country to be in, we actually try to budget in our projects for travel grants for participants from farther away to be able to join us at CERN's Idea Square. And this is proven to be working quite effectively. As you can see, we've reached participants in several remote places compared to Switzerland. But we're trying to do better throughout the years. Another issue you could see on the right is the fact that none of the teams that we build to tackle challenges are actually from only one area. You can see that there is basically no major area coming up when you look at the skill sets and the background of all the people. And more importantly, you can see that our gender ratio is very near the 50%, although in the early years it was very difficult. And I would say this is mostly because of the lack of input, i.e. female participants, applicants to choose from and be able to join them to the hackathons. But we did a lot of outreach, and this ratio is quite good these days. So what we do is a curated hackathon. So what we do is we put challenges together and then really shape them in order for them to be useful and tackleable during a hackathon. Then we actually also select the participants, which apply with a rapid CV and some basic information about themselves. We handcraftedly put the teams together based on their skills, their origin, their backgrounds, everything that we can know about them that they've told us. We don't ask for all kinds of information, but we allow people to tell us what's unique about them. And then we put the teams together and allow them to prepare for the hackathon, which is a 60-hour event, which we typically do at the end of October. This is quite different to all the other hackathons out there, but it's a methodology that works and we are very proud to use. Let's a bit see about the outcomes of this. So in our earlier hackathons, we actually had a team that was tasked to look for finding an inflatable fridge under $10 to keep things cool, originally vaccines. But that team actually, when they started working on the hackathon, they actually, there were some semiconductor detector experts who actually knew about the materials that were useful to keep detector dry. And one of the people that were in the hackathon actually was a ICRC forensic expert, and it was a field surgeon. And he told us that one of the major problems they have on the field is actually how to preserve bodies after disastrous events. So the team at the hackathon managed to put all the technology together that was readily available, almost off the shelf, to actually make better body bags, which are now tested in the field by the Red Cross. There were 10,000 units that were tested. And this was one of the very nice first outcomes of our first hackathon. But it was not the only one. As I mentioned, this project started with a team looking for an inflatable cheap fridge that could keep vaccines cool. But actually, part of the team kept working on that idea. And Adiabatic is a startup in the UK that actually helps to bring the vaccine to keep it cold, even for very, very long journeys. You have to imagine that some vaccines travel for 6 or 7 days before reaching the relevant people. This last year, we also had, like traditionally, lots of activities. So this is just a showcase of the several projects we tackled, but you can click on the links later on. But I wanted to showcase two major things that were tackled during the hackathon. So one was the concept of off-grid cooking, because in many places of the world, people do not have access to kitchens, like full-fledged kitchens like we kind of imagine, and they use portable equipment to actually cook. And one of the biggest issue about those is, of course, all the danger with carbon monoxide poisoning or other elements if the areas are not properly ventilated, or other issues, burning, for example, or fires. And one of the ways to do this would actually use solar panels to provide electricity and use an electrical system. But still then, things are wasteful because there is a lot of heat that is lost. So with basic insulation and simple mechanical packaging, you can already severely improve the efficiency of these systems and make them also cheap, for that they can be used on the field and in various places where grid electricity is not necessarily available. Another big topic that was tackled and is also very lively today, but it started even for us before COVID, with the aspect of remote collaboration, is how can people work together remotely? We in particle physics are used to do this, and there's been several talks here already mentioning this, but this is not the case for everyone in the world and in other fields. So during the PORT 2019 Humanitarian Hackathon, Remotely Green was started to actually really help lots of people to try to do remote collaboration more. So we started with the hackathon in October, and then the project evolved in several ways to get some incubation and also grants from the Shuttleworth Foundation. Just let me describe a bit more the concept. So obviously we know that online meetings have some benefits versus in person. In particular, they're faster to organize and do because you don't need to travel between the places. They're usually cheaper because you don't have to get the airfare, the accommodation, and all this. We found earlier, but also it's more striking today that they're more inclusive because there is no separation between the people who are physically at a place or at a distance, because online everyone is at the same distance. And also importantly, they are 96% greener because of majorly the airfare that is not to be accounted for. However, it's not so great. Online events also have some issues. And when surveying people, we found out that the biggest downside is the lack of in-person interaction in online meetings. And really, lots of feedback was that a lot of people had joined physical meetings is really to meet people, not just to look at slides and listen to speakers. So the solution for that, Remotely Green promotes, is virtual encounters. So trying to bring the coffee break online, basically by randomly mapping people based on just random choice or common interest, or common interest derived through their social media interaction, or for example, the LinkedIn profile, to try to put them in touch with the relevant people that are important to them and to foster collaboration. So really, it's really about this. So coincidence could be just the random part if you request to talk with a specific person, but also try to find commonalities between people, or even contrast, because we like to be challenged. Another thing, I don't think I have time to show the video, but you could see it there. This gives you a glimpse of our events. But one thing that I'd like to show through this screen here that you will see is next is advertising our caterer. So when we do our events at the port, we actually typically use Cuisine Lab, which is a Geneva-based association, which actually involves refugees who got settled in Geneva, who are actually expert cooks. And we are actually getting to taste cuisine from Afghanistan, Syria, Eritrea, and many other places through people who actually have lived there, but have come for a new life in Switzerland and share their culture and food knowledge with us. And so this is our exclusive caterer. We do not ever anymore get standard catering packages that are usually available. In terms of other events, I will quickly go through some of them. So we have organized the Diplomatic Hackathon, and this is really also an event that was, as our other events, very diverse, very gender balanced, and also with a decent age pyramid, similar to what we typically have at CERN. So the key part here is that you can apply hackathons to anything. So you could, in this case here, was human rights violations, gathering of evidence, showing what's relevant, what's fake, what's real, and see, in contrast, what can be done to tackle those by providing real proof to courts of justices throughout the world, for example. Another thing that we've more recently involved in tackling the future is the quantum internet. So soon, with security being more and more important online, how quantum technologies allow for a safer and more privacy-tolerant internet. And this is an interesting event also because it was our first event where we participated through many events being hosted in several cities. So there were 6 cities in Europe where we had the hackathon organized, and we had various interaction between the various teams throughout that hackathon, which was held in November. We also had a spin-off event in India. So some participants of our hackathons actually liked the idea so well that they started their own in India, so at the Symbiosis Statistical Institute. So it's also a humanitarian hackathon, which tackled some of the projects that were also tackled at the Ports Hackathon, but some new ones. And in particular, this idea of Stovathon that I explained a bit earlier, Remotely Green, and also how to bridge, for example, the gender gap in technology, or how to handle, massive deforestation or counteract it and ensure that we have a decent fraction of forest in our environment. Now moving to a last part of the talk, which is about online hackathons. Obviously, because of COVID, a lot of things had to move online. So we organized together with other partners in the Switzerland, innovation sphere, an online hackathon in April, which was quite big. So it was a fully online hackathon with 4,500 participants and about 500 mentors. And we had several topical areas where people could apply for challenges that would be tackled during the hackathon, and we got 500 of those. And in the end, we selected 190. And together with our mentors, even partner organizations, which are about 200, and even Swiss parliamentarians, all this together came out to provide several projects, which were about 280. Sorry, I didn't put the number there. And we highlighted 42 projects which we found more relevant and had a promising future. We had a lot of organizers, as usual. It's a very diverse environment, although because it was Swiss-based, there was diversity to be understood within Switzerland and not within the world in this case. And we held the second hackathon in May, which was a bit smaller in scope. We only had about 200 participants with the same principles, but the idea here was that it was right before the confinement started, and we wanted to see how the momentum went there, and we had some also nice projects. One project that I will describe in a minute was very important to this. Another thing that we tried to do at Versus Virus was actually make sure that the activities can continue beyond the hackathon. So we managed to get from our partners a pool of 200,000 Swiss francs in prizes and grant to make sure that the activities would be able to continue. And we also set up a 25-week incubation program to bring the ideas to market. And this is more handled by our partners, for example, at the Impact Hub in Switzerland. An example outcome of this hackathon is, for example, the concept of a pandemia parliament, which actually was highlighted in the Versus Virus hackathon. Here, the idea was that parliaments had to shut down because of COVID and really could not really work the same way online, because you have a level of security, safety, you have a level of needing to vote in a reliable way, in a trustable way. And so Pandemia Parliament came up with a platform that allowed parliamentarians to conduct regular parliamentary business online. Of course, this is not something so easily done because laws exist and rule how parliament operates, but basically they're trying to push it now, and Swiss parliament has actually made a proposed vote to actually allow it to be working online. And so this is something that's pushing from a bottom-up approach. This were all the partners of Versus Virus, so you could see there were a lot, and this really shows the strength of a lot of things we can accomplish with many, some big, but mostly small partner organizations. And then finally, we also organized the CERN WebFest. So this year, the CERN Summer Student Program had to be canceled, unfortunately, due to COVID, and at least moved online. The physical program did not take place. And so therefore, this WebFest, which is typically held during the summer program, was the first edition that was fully online. Which was also an opportunity to go global. So typically you only have the summer students who participate and mentors who are around Geneva, because you need to come to CERN to take part. But this time also the theme was relevant, because the theme was working together apart, accelerating collaboration. But as you can see, there was a lot of enthusiasm from many countries throughout the world. And we had 440 registrants from 82 countries to an event that was fully online this time. And we had 27 project submissions that came for this hackathon. So you could check them online if you want. One thing that also stems from the situation we have here with critical decision making and pushing ways of doing in high energy physics to overcome the limit of big problems. So in particular, GluonNet is something that was also handled by members of the port, where basically HEP scientists use visual analytics and machine learning tools to connect diverse people and ideas to empower people and allow them for successful collaboration, bringing time savings and allowing for informed decisions. This was a bit tackled in the technology application session yesterday, if you want to know some more information. Just before I conclude, I just wanted to say that, yeah, there is this very nice meme that actually shows what exactly diversity and inclusion are and what it can do with belonging, because this is a crucial part of the whole process. And one example was given about the party, but we believe that diversity is being invited to a hackathon. Inclusion is really being asked to collaborate and hack together. And the belonging is really being able to hack like no one's watching, like you're free to do whatever you want. And before I finish, I just wanted to advertise this very nice hackathon, which is Hack for Inclusion, organized at MIT. And then you could basically have this participation if you're interested in 2021. The 2020 version was already done, so there is not a possibility to participate this year. But if you're interested, and I'm definitely, I think it would be something nice. That's it for me. And if you have any comments or questions, feel free to ask them.
Thank you very much for this super interesting talk, Karolos. So please, questions. I don't see any question, any hand raised. So I have one related to the intellectual properties, I mean the rights. Yeah. How is it working? Because, for instance, if you develop with different enterprises, with different people, some of the tools as you have been showing, then how, I mean, is you protect them or to avoid that people, I mean, you understand my question?
Yes. So the question is a very important one. Our approach to this has been open source. So we always say we prefer that, you know, everything that was done is open source during the hackathon. Doesn't mean that people cannot move ahead with the ideas later on. And the reason is that hackathons involve a lot of stakeholders. So if you have the idea because you face a problem, for example, on the field, like the Red Cross faced the problem with bodies, you put people together, but you come up with the idea, but you can't execute it. So you need people who can execute it. You need people to give feedback. So it's very difficult in that case to even move forward and protect it, because if you protect that kind of thing, then there is a lot of people who need a small piece of this and that, and it's very difficult. So the approach of going open source for the purpose of the hackathon means that people can collaborate freely and reuse whatever they did, whatever their colleagues did together, and whoever wants to move on and do something is welcome. Now, however, we all know that the idea is one part, but the execution is 90% of the work. And of course, we want to value the 90%. So people who want to continue anything, be it from the port participants or not, can actually just take that and start their normal process of innovation, which then would involve, not always, but sometimes necessarily, some form of intellectual property protection. So this is the way we tackle it. Usually we found it that people are very receptive to this. And so we've only had rare cases where people wanted to keep things closed source, but still were fully open about their outcomes. So they were just keeping the code private because they expected to bring it to the market.
Okay, thank you very much. So, any other question?
Yes, Radek, maybe I have one related. So can the software which you produced be used in the commercial products, or what is exactly the license in the end, or was it sometimes the case?
Right. So we've had cases where, I mean, usually these problems being humanitarian are not so much something that, you know, traditional business is interested in. There are commercial opportunities, and in this case, it's up to the teams to decide the model they want. So we at the port do not make software our own. We actually make the events, and we made a software to help make online hackathons during the Versus Virus Hackathon. But every team is free to use their own approach to that. So we recommend open source software and paid support for the execution, a bit like, you know, Fedora and many other Linux or computing related companies have done. But it's not a requirement. So I can see there were 2 or 3 very closed source projects because of the high level of technology and machine learning that was used, and also the libraries they used had to imply that they had to be closed source. But most of the time, it's really open.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot. So if there are no further questions, maybe we can go forward. Thank you very much, Karolos, again.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me. Yeah,
we will check for your report. And then we move to the last talk before the coffee break. This is the evolution of the regional age and gender demographics in the Atlas collaboration by Clara. So, Clara, if you...
Yeah, I made the mistake of sharing before turning my video on.
Okay, that's good.
Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Great. Oh, no, we didn't want to do that. This one.
Now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So yes, I will present the evolution of regional age and gender demographics in the Atlas collaboration. And my name is Clara Nellist, and my pronouns are she and her. So an outline. So this, as I said, I'm presenting data showing the aspects of the demographics and diversity of the collaboration, the Atlas collaboration, with regards to gender and age and how the various regions of the world are represented in Atlas. So this was an original study that was performed by a team set up within Atlas to look at this information in 2016, and the plots were updated in 2019. So I want to make very clear that there are absolutely more aspects of diversity than the ones that we're looking at here, and they're not reflected in the study due to the limitations of the data, but that is, say, shortcoming of the study. So I wanted to share this with you because I thought it was quite good timing. So last Friday, there was this meme that was going around Twitter, which was to say that you have a joke. And then it started off being a pun about something in science. So I made one originally about the Higgs boson and about it being too heavy to make a joke about. And then not too long afterwards, I made this joke, which says, I have a joke about being a woman in physics, but you probably won't think it's funny until my male colleague repeats it 10 minutes later. And when I made it, I expected that maybe it would get a couple of retweets and likes, and maybe a few people in my network would find it sad funny. Over the course of the weekend, it got 85,000 likes. It was retweeted 9,000 times, and there are 400 replies to my tweet, but that doesn't include the replies to any retweets that people made. It was also shared on Instagram and on Facebook, so screenshots like this one were shared on those platforms. And so I think it really shows that that this is something that many people, many women, but not just women, experience in physics and beyond. There were many people who were saying that this doesn't just apply to physics, but it applies to their career as well. Yeah, so it's a shame that it resonated. I really am not happy that so many people have experienced this, but I think we have to talk about these things and we have to share our experiences to be able to find out what is happening with our colleagues and be able to move forward and make changes. And so this data that I'm going to discuss and how it evolves over time within the collaboration, it gives us a tool to see the broad picture and trends. So again, we don't know what we need to do until we look at it and analyze it and talk about it. Okay, and this is a map of the Atlas collaboration, and this is member nationalities. So this is the country that people are from originally, or that is on their passport at least, within the Atlas collaboration. And we have over 5,500 members with 103 nationalities as of, so this was captured in November 2018. So the Atlas collaboration really is a global collaboration with people from all over the world. So the data is collected from the CERN administrative database. So this includes information such as name, legal gender, which is defined as male or female in the administrative database, profession, affiliation, institution, and nationality. And this is augmented by other databases that track participation. So for example, in the Atlas collaboration, we track the contributions of each member, technical roles that people have had, leadership roles, and recognitions. And this data is explored for various correlations with gender and regional distribution. So some further definitions. So a member is someone who belongs to the Atlas collaboration. An author is someone who signs Atlas publications. So within Atlas, we have an author qualification procedure where somebody has to perform service work for the collaboration, which then allows them to sign all future publications that come from Atlas. Gender here, I want to just open this up a little bit. So this is the legal gender as stated by government issued ID, which is generally a passport. And the option is between male or female for the CERN directory. Some countries do allow a third option, but this is not yet recognized at CERN due to French and Swiss regulations. And just to say, if, for example, somebody is transgender and they have gone through the procedure and their country allows them to go through the procedure of defining their legal gender correctly, then this will be reflected. They will be correctly identified in the data. But for people who don't have that legal option, then they will be incorrectly identified in the data. So I just want to acknowledge that. And then home institution is the research or educational organization to which a person belongs. So the first plot I'm going to show is the total number of Atlas authors on the 1st of July each year. And so this has not been updated yet for this year, but I think we can see very good trends over the last sort of 15 years, which is the total number of qualified authors has increased a lot over this time. So as people join the Atlas collaboration and qualify to become authors. And the fraction of women has gone up from about 13% to around 20%, which we see as quite in agreement with other collaborations. So we also looked at age. So this is the Atlas member age from 20 to 70. And as you can see, the Atlas is quite a young collaboration. We have a significant peak around 25 and 30. And the authors, it's slightly older because people have to perform qualification tasks. So for example, master students wouldn't necessarily be authors. So the age is higher for Atlas authors. And then on the bottom, we can see the fraction of women. So I didn't say earlier, I wanted to specify that from now on, although in the CERN database, it says male and female, from now on, I will use the terms women and men. So the fraction of women, we can see the authorship in general, and then the authorship older than 35 years. And the definition within this study is that those who are older than 35 years are more likely to hold permanent positions at their institutions, for example, although this isn't necessarily guaranteed and also doesn't take into account people who started a career in physics later in their career. And so we also have, so the dotted lines are from 1995 to 2009. Then the dashed lines are from 2009 to 2014, and the solid lines are from 2014 to 2019. So that you can see there is an increase in the number of people in the collaboration, both for men and women. And then we have the same data ranges for upside down triangle, right way up triangle. I don't know if that's a bias, that's just my way of viewing them, and squares for the different time periods. And what we can see for all time periods, that as the age of the member increases, the fraction of women within the collaboration goes down, although it does slightly improve over time for the different time periods we have here. And we see this both in members and for authors. And then we also have, so the green map that I showed before was nationalities, but for the next plots, I'm going to talk about institutes. So this is the institute that a person is registered at, as I said. So for example, I'm at Radboud University with NICEF, and so I am counted as Dutch in this setup. So for the region of affiliation, so here on the right, I've defined the different broader regions, so Asia, Eastern Europe, Mediterranean, North America, Northern Europe, and Southern Hemisphere. And then these are all of the countries that are associated with those regions. And so you can see we have a significant number of people from Europe. I don't want that. Yeah, oh no, I don't know if I can move that, but it covers the plot. Yeah, and you can see that over time, the fraction of women within each region is increasing. So that's good to see in this plot. We also have a geographic distribution. So this breaks up the regions more finely. So for example, we can see we have a large number of people from the United States, from the United Kingdom, from Germany. And again, the numbers have increased as the time has increased. And generally, we see a trend, an increasing fraction of women for each of these countries. Fraction of plenary talks. So this is for Atlas Week. So in Atlas Week, we have, it's 3 times a year. And people are selected within the collaboration to give plenary talks in the Atlas Week presentations. So we can see that generally the number of presenters who are women are consistent or slightly higher than the fraction overall. And so again, I remind you that the dashed line is the fraction of authors who are women, and the solid line is the fraction of authors who are older than 35 years old, but who are women. So yeah, in 2018, 2019, it's higher than the fraction in the collaboration. We also looked at women in leadership roles. So we have some definitions here on the left to explain what each of the terms mean. So it's generally an order of responsibility within the collaboration. So we have top level management. So this is the spokesperson who selects generally two deputies, and then also technical resource upgrade coordinators, and they have a term of 2 years. And for example, the spokesperson can be renewed just once for their term. We have major area coordinators, and there are 16 of these, and they also have 2-year terms. We have physics and performance group conveners, coordinators. So we have 2 conveners per group. Combined performance, there are 6, and physics analysis, there are 12 people. And they also have 2-year terms. We have physics and performance subgroups. So these are not elected by the collaboration, but are selected by the, they're selected. And that's 2 conveners per subgroup. And we have publication committee, 12 members for 2-year terms, speakers committee, where 15 members for a 3-year term. And then the one that I want to highlight here in this plot are the institution team leaders. We have 182 Atlas member institutions, but these team leaders are selected by the institutions themselves. So there's not an Atlas overview, for example, to say who should be the team leader of an Atlas institution. And so generally we can see that over time, so the time periods that I mentioned before are also reflected here, but the legend is different. So we have black for the earliest period, red for the middle period, and green for the most recent time period. And we can generally see that there is some increase in leadership roles for women within the Atlas collaboration. And the blue point is captured just at one point in time, because we don't have fixed times when people can change their leadership in the institution. So it's just a date upon which we take this measurement. Yeah, so that was a rundown of all of the plots that I wanted to show today, of just some of the information that we were able to collect in this study. So I've presented data on the demographics of the Atlas collaboration related to gender and geographic distribution. As I said before, there are more aspects of diversity which are not reflected here due to the limitations of the data, but we have Atlas diversity and inclusion contacts, 4 of them within the collaboration, who are mandated to look at these various aspects of diversity and work with the collaboration. And so their work is not fully, this is just one aspect of the work that they do. It's not fully, it's not the only thing that they do. So the summary for the region, Atlas has collaborators with more than 100 different nationalities from institutes from 38 different countries. Some regions have shown substantial growth in the number of members during the collaboration lifetime. And a reminder that this is based on institutional affiliations. And then the summary for age and gender, about 20% of the collaborators are women, a decrease in the fraction of women with an increase in age is observed, which is also consistent with what is observed for other collaborations and in physics in general. Participation of women speakers at Atlas Week Talks is currently greater than the fraction of women authors. So this is a point to note. And the fraction of leadership roles held by women members has increased over the last 5 years for all roles. So this is good to see that the collaboration is either creating the environment or actively working towards this. So thank you very much. And I just want to acknowledge that some of these slides were based on a previous talk.
Thank you very much, Clara, for the talk with so many data. Any question for Clara before the break? We will have, in any case, a discussion session after, but please, Uta.
Thank you very much for this talk, Clara, and for the encouraging numbers you showed on the female fractions in all the different career states. So we see that the percentage of women in the different career levels is growing over the time, and in many different career steps, we are already above the average number of women in the collaboration, as you have shown. So would you say there is a level of saturation that we can expect? At which level would you estimate will this be?
I'm not sure I understand fully the saturation.
Yeah, so maybe when you come back, I don't know the slide number, but where you had the different career levels, yes, the management position, yeah. All this. So we see that women in leadership roles are already above the average that they are in the collaboration. And do you expect this will go up in the next years, or would you say there's a saturation level that we can expect?
So it's difficult to say. I think and I'm speaking a bit more personally here rather than on behalf of Atlas, I think that it's appropriate for the management to reflect the representation we have within the collaboration, but also if we want to improve things in the long term, we do need to see more, for example, when we're talking about gender, senior women to then create an environment. And I'm not saying that women have to create the environment, but to show that for junior colleagues that it is possible, and to ensure that that then we increase the fraction of women in physics overall. So I don't think I think at minimum we should reflect the representation of the collaboration, but that if we want to improve in the future, it should increase to reflect where we want to be as well. I'm not sure if that's...
Yeah, so, okay, yeah, thank you very much. I understand. So maybe my phrasing was not, yeah, it's okay. Thanks.
Yeah,
what you wanted to say.
Yeah, but for the number of, so we don't have positive discrimination, for example, within the collaboration, but diversity is considered, and we measure it here in these studies to ensure that it is reflecting the collaboration.
Okay, thank you, Daniel.
Thanks, Clara. Really nice presentation. One quick question: did you look at regional differences? For example, connecting to Karolos' talk in report, we have seen that the application from women in from different regions of the world or even different countries were quite different, and learning out of this helped us also to reach almost perfect gender balance in this application participation. So do you see some regions of the world, some countries which basically have a much better kind of gender balance from which we can learn for the school systems of that countries, or how basically, I don't know, the technical jobs are advertised or recognized? So do you see some, I don't know, role models that we can learn from this data?
So here you can see the geographic distribution. So it's grouped by some countries, but for example, you can see that the Netherlands had a significant increase over the 3 time periods and are now at around 30%. Portugal and Spain are quite high, and I was trying to look for Italy because they're usually quite high as well. We didn't look into what is happening in those countries that are resulting in higher fractions of women within the collaboration. I have personal ideas, but I haven't looked at something more concrete to be able to say fully. But I do think it's a good idea, and it's important to see where how these countries are recruiting, for example, to have higher numbers. And one thing I will say, so I think it's very important to increase the number of young women, of girls who are interested in physics and who are coming into the field. And that obviously starts us off at a deficit within the collaboration. But personally, now my focus is more on what kind of environment are we creating within the collaboration to keep the women that we do have and the other minoritized groups that we do have. Because if we're not creating an environment in which people can truly thrive within physics and feel like they're making a contribution, and then they leave to go somewhere else, just putting more people into the collaboration won't change things in the long term. The thing we really, in my opinion, need to focus on is also making sure we keep the people that we already have.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you. I think it is related. Sorry.
Can I connect
it to
a final question?
Sure.
With COVID-19, do you see a threat or an opportunity to
that? For the number of women, for example?
Yeah, because what we see basically is that many collaboration, but even companies realize that working from home office is much more compatible with productive work when many people thought. So do you think this is an opportunity?
I definitely think it's an opportunity, and as a previous speaker said, we should learn from, actually I think it was Karolos was saying that we should learn, or Hannah said it too, sorry, I'll look back at the slides to remember. Yeah, we should learn from the COVID-19 situation of what has worked and how we can support people to, for example, work from home and not to travel if necessary. And I saw a tweet just before we started of somebody who was taking care of their child whilst attending the conference, which is not always necessarily possible if people have to travel. But I have also seen early studies that have shown, for example, and it's not necessarily in our collaborations, we can't look at this, but that have shown that the number of women publishing during COVID-19 has significantly gone down, whereas the number of men who have published have actually had a greater output during lockdown than they had before. So that's saying that perhaps there are situations in the home environment or the caring responsibilities that are falling greater on women. And so if we all decide to move to working from home full time, we have to make sure that the home environment doesn't then burden some groups more than others. So I think it's important to look, and I definitely think there are features that we can take from this to improve the situation. There's people who have chronic illnesses who find it very tiring to travel and then participate in a conference would benefit from this remote conference, for example, where they can just attend the sessions that they're interested in and still participate. So yeah, I think there's lots we can learn.
Thank you. Okay, I think this is for a long discussion that maybe we can talk later in the discussion session, because I think I have also many things to say. But just fast questions, Karolos and Jonas. Karolos first, please.
Yeah, very quickly related to what you just said. I was wondering if we ever looked at the ratio of in either by region or by gender of the people with permanent jobs versus non-permanent jobs. I don't recall ever seeing such a plot for Atlas. I was wondering if Belle or other collaborations have the same, but since it's for this talk, maybe we can bring it up later. But you seem to say there was none, right?
No.
Your expression.
Yeah, for this study, we look at here the authorship in general, and then older than 35 years, which is taken as a proxy for permanent positions. But it does then, it doesn't take into consideration someone who, for example, started a PhD at 30.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. And then Jonas?
Clara, you mentioned that your focus is now to keep those women and other people from underrepresented groups that made it into Atlas and into particle physics there, and create an environment where they can thrive. What's the most important thing that we need to do to achieve that?
Good question. I don't think there is one important thing. Otherwise, we probably would have done it. I think that there were a lot of these very overt issues that took place. Everybody, not everybody, but I've heard before, oh, it was much worse 20, 25 years ago. And that's because a lot of these issues were quite overt. There was overt sexism, there was overt harassment. And these things do still take place, but often they're more hidden. And so it's much more difficult to uncover them and to even talk about it, which is why I showed the tweet that I shared, because I did not expect it to go. I know the situation. I've experienced issues that I feel have, in that situation, held back my progress. But even I didn't think that it would resonate that much. And so the fact that if lots of, and it was mostly women that were retweeting my tweet, if lots of women are saying that they've experienced situations where their ideas have been attributed to somebody else, then that's something that's going to hold them back in their career. So unfortunately, I don't think there is one important thing, but recognition and also an environment to do the work. That's very vague, but yeah, we can discuss much more in the discussion session, because I think it's a long.
I didn't expect you to have a magic bullet, but if you had, I thought
yeah,
I asked you for it.
If I have one, I'll definitely share it, because that would be great.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we are running late, but I think we can still, I mean, continue the discussion after the session. So thank you very much for the talks, and yeah, I think it will be nice if we recombine in 15 minutes or something like that. It's okay, Radek?
Okay, so let's.
I think 45.
Let's join again at 45. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's fine since we have time for discussion later.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and see you later. Ciao.
Hello, maybe is Radek speaking. Eluned, I hope I pronounce your name well. Can you please try to share your slides?
Sorry, was that to me?
Yes, or if you already tried. I
No,
don't
I
remember.
can. Sorry, I thought it was not the next talk, but maybe I'm wrong. Yes, let me.
Just need to be sure that everything will be smooth.
Can you see these?
Yes, maybe just try to switch to the full screen and then we are done.
Is that okay?
Yes, looks good. So thanks a lot.
Should I stop share? Thanks.
So, hello everybody. I think it's time to reconvene. I am Radek. I'm a local convener of this group. So I'm sitting right in Prague, in the institute where all the sessions are broadcasted. And yeah, so the time for the slides is the same as before. And I remember one of the last questions was how to increase the fraction of women in science, and I strongly believe that one answer is by outreach, and I think the first talk is about this topic. So please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Radek, for this nice introduction. I'll start my presentation in a second. So now you should see my slides. So
yes,
my talk
looks good.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Okay, my talk is about ideas from the IPOC group, how we can nurture girls' interest in science, and for this, especially with our key activity from IPOC, which are the particle physics masterclasses. First, for all those who don't know what a masterclass is, I will briefly introduce the concept. So a masterclass is targeted for high school students in general, and they are invited to university or research lab and made to be particle physicists for a day. So they hear introductory talks about the particle physics and what are open questions, what we are researching, and what we already know about. Then they have a lunch with physicists to meet some role models and exchange ideas with them. And then there's a hands-on activity where they can analyze authentic data, which you can see here in the top right bottom, where they are analyzing atlas data. They look at event displays, characterize the tracks, they apply cuts and build histograms, and can find known particles, but also find the unknown particles, and so feel like scientists who are working in a collaboration, especially since they have a video conference at the end of the day where groups from several countries meet in this video conference and they combine their data because every group works on different data. International Masterclasses is a program running each year in spring, and it's now running in 60 countries, which are all marked green on the map you can see on the bottom right. And there are more than 220 universities and research labs participating in this program and offering masterclasses to high school students in their regions. So we have more than 30,000 students per year participating in this effort. And as I said before, it's organized by the IPOC collaboration, the International Particle Physics Outreach Group. And there was a talk on the International Masterclasses already 2 days ago in the outreach and education session, if you are interested in the basic concept. Our motivation in this masterclass is to inspire the next generation of scientists. And we always get a lot of pictures from the institute that organize masterclasses. And sometimes the pictures look like the top left one or top right one. So you see diversity of people in terms of gender but we also get sometimes pictures who look like the bottom right one. These are, of course, also precious people who we want to inspire, who we want to get in contact with particle physics. But you see there are only boys on this picture on the bottom right together with their teachers. And this leads us to a fact that is fact in physics, that women are still underrepresented here. And here I have a plot from the American Institute of Physics, where they look at the percentage of physics bachelor and PhD that have been earned by women in the past 30 years. You see it's slightly going up, but the number of women with physics bachelor is still only 22%, and the number of women with a physics PhD is 20%. So this is just a fact, and if you look into the factors behind this, this is a complex issue, of course, and there are many factors. I have listed some here. So physics is viewed by society to be hard, to be elite, to be difficult, and this is all attributes that are socially conditioned or socially ascribed not mainly to girls, and there's also social conditioning of boys and girls in very different ways, which starts very early, and this is of course detrimental to the choice of their career perspectives. And we also know that career advice and career guidance is very crucial, that they get to know role models, that they can meet other people who are working in this field and get an idea, and this idea might pop up that, oh, this might be also interesting for me to work in this field and to go to university and study physics. We see here again a plot over 35 years, how the percentage of PhDs earned by women in different fields from STEM have slightly increased. The green one, which is now at the most bottom, is physics. So physics is really the field which we already heard in the first talk today, which has the biggest gender gap among all the science studies. And here's just another indicator for this fact. You might remember Donna Strickland. She's a Canadian physicist, and she won the Nobel Prize for Physics in 2018, 2 years ago, together with Gérard Mourou, for the invention of chirp pulse amplification. And she did not have even a Wikipedia entry before she received the Nobel Prize. Of course, this was created right afterwards, and now it's in enriched resource. But this is also a fact how women are not so much represented in the field or underrepresented. So we see that it's crucial that we need more young women entering the field, and also we want to inspire more girls to pursue a science career. The International Day of Women and Girls in Science, which was already mentioned before, is a good opportunity to tackle this challenge. As the UNESCO stated in this plot, women are underrepresented in every region of the world, so less than 30% of researchers are women throughout the whole field of science. And the United Nations started an initiative because it's close to their heart that gender equality is a core issue. And in December 2015, the General Assembly adopted a resolution and established this International Day of Women and Girls in Science to recognize the critical role that women and girls play in science and technology communities. So they proclaimed February 11 of each year to be this Awareness Rising Day. And the aim was to support and promote the access of women and girls to science and education and research activities. And there was a call for everybody to participate and to offer activities. There's also an international conference held by the United Nations organization each year around this date. And yes, so this is organized by United Nations. IPOC started with particle physics masterclasses for girls in 2017. This was a decision that IPOC agreed on in their fall meeting in November 2016. So they wanted to launch these masterclasses, and they are targeted especially at girls, not exclusively. So there was a strong barrier. So people in some institutes don't want to offer it exclusively, but we try to target this as much as possible to girls So we ask all institutes that participate to have female lecturers and female tutors as much as possible. And also all the video conference running in the afternoon are with female moderators. The offer of this initiative was made to all Masterclasses institutes, which are more than 220 actually. And the turnout was low, but we got 10 institutes who were interested in the first year and who started to hold a masterclass targeting especially girls. And there were 320 girls participating in the first year. And we arranged 3 video conferences. And because at that year, February 11 was a Saturday, some of them already had their video conference on Friday. And we had 6 female moderators who ran the video conferences and moderated. Here I show you some pictures of events in various locations. So all the institutes were very excited about this event, and they tried to enrich the program as much as possible to make it really effective. So at the institute in Barcelona, they did an Atlas masterclass with 40 girls only, and they had a visit to their local data center. And on Saturday, they offered in addition astroparticle masterclass for the girls, which is data from the MAGIC telescope, gamma ray hunters. And they produced a nice announcement poster, which you can see on the right-hand side. So there were some role models with a short bio here, like Lise Meitner or Emmy Noether, Jocelyn Belle Burnell. And they also attached a poster where they have women that are currently working in their department and doing physics research. Then in Cosenza in Italy, we had also a masterclass with high school students, but they also accepted some young university students to make the exchange between these 2 groups. And they had an extra talk, Le Donne nella Ricerca, on the information of women and girls in science in Italy and around the world. And here's a quote from one of the students who said it was a fantastic day. And the Council of Physics at Cosenza University acknowledged the February 11 as a special day of the physics department dedicated to girls in agreement with this resolution from the United Nations. And so they will run this event for the next years again and have this day especially acknowledged. At the APC in Paris, they did also masterclass with Atlas data, where they had 24 high school students and also tried to get them in contact with young female researchers to make this exchange with role models very efficient. And they also sent us some quotes and were enthusiastic about the result of the day. And here are some last pictures from the event at Prague. And there was a quote from the organizer who said, there's no general understanding in Czech Republic that we need to make special action for women or girls. So it was difficult for him to announce and promote the event. And I'll come back later to this quote, but because I think it's a very interesting point to start discussions. They had a small group of 14 girls from high school and 5 groups from first year of physics, and also included some female scientists from the department and discussed gender issues with them. They had a tour they could offer, and they got unexpected great attention from media. So there was a television send a reporter with a team, and it was in the Czech TV news at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and there were 2 long articles in newspapers. So this was not expected, but they of course were very happy with this. In 2018, we had the next edition of this event where we saw 8 research labs, a lower number than the year before. And that year we asked Anna Godinho, who's the head of CERN's education, communication and outreach, and she gave a welcoming address to some of the groups in this video conference, as you can see here. And we had female moderators. And as you also see from some pictures, some institutes invite boys and girls, but most of them target specifically girls in these events. There was a second video conference, and in this video conference we also present some slides with information about the situation of women in physics, and we try to encourage people, and we try to show that the numbers go up and increase, and that there's more and more people, women who are successful in this field. In 2019, we had already 11 research labs, of them 9 targeting girls only in their events, and we had to arrange 3 video conferences again. And then in 2020, that was this year in spring, before the COVID lockdown happened, we had 17 groups participating, and then we already had to arrange 4 video conferences because there were so many groups who wanted to participate. So we see a slight increase in this numbers. And there was one group from Lancaster University, and the organizer said it was first time that we took part on the International Day of Women and Science, and we hosted a school group and had a great day. Thanks very much. So this is also encouraging for us because it's extra effort to organize it. So we want to see these quotes that keeps us working. This is coming back to the quote. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have the final version of slides here. So I see that the cartoon is overlaying the text. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, that's bad. Sorry that I'm not so well prepared. I'm just changing the set of slides.
Maybe you can just read the text if you have it somewhere.
Yeah, I've rearranged the text. That's the problem. I'll be back in a second.
But maybe the version that you upload was okay, because we have it. If not,
yeah, I have uploaded this version. So no, it's again. Okay, so let's have a look at this cartoon. And when organizing girls targeting events, there will always be people who fear that this might be discriminatory to boys. We had these concerns even within IPOC. We have discussed this before we started the effort. And as you saw by the quote from the Czech colleague, there's always discussion on this also in the institutes who want to organize such an event. Looking at this is a tricky area, and the cartoon on the right-hand side summarizes very well the difference between equality and equity. So equality means you're offering the same article. In this case here, it's offering bicycles to people with various physical attributes and ability or disability. So when you sorry, so from this picture with the bicycles, you can see that the approach does not recognize that people have different needs and starting points. And the equity approach, which is shown in the picture below, takes into contributions that people have different needs. So of course, this is a example here with bicycles, but you can also think of an approach when offering masterclasses. And if you offer masterclasses to everybody, then you might not encourage girls enough to participate. And in an equity approach, you would offer it to be a girls only event, or you would say that we have 50% of places in this masterclass reserved for girls. And then you start to address some of these structural inequalities which are there, and that you make people recognize that people are not equal in society. And yeah, so although a normal masterclass is free to access for girls and boys, girls might need extra encouragement. and therefore we are organizing these masterclass for girls only, and we try to encourage the institutes to hold them and also to make them especially for girls. Oh no, this is really not. I'm sorry. I'm really in the. I really uploaded the wrong version, and this is still a draft text. So I'm eating up the discussion time. No, sorry, I cannot find my last slide, but I just say what I wanted to summarize. So it's we are organizing these masterclass events to nurture girls' interest in science, and we have some nice testimonials from the institutes who do it, and also from participants. And we know of some physicists, female physicists, who are now working at CERN and who participated in a masterclass, and said that's really encouraged them to stay in this field and to study physics. And the girls can experience their self-efficacy in such a masterclass, and they can meet role models and get more ideas how they can do an own career in this field. So this is organized every year on February 11. In years when this is a Saturday or Sunday, we try to arrange it on Fridays and on Mondays. It's organized by IPOC, and we see a growing interest in this. If you are interested to participate with your research lab or with being a CERN moderator and talking to the girls on February 11, you're free to contact me, and I will immediately upload the correct version of slides. So sorry for that, but I think my message was clear, and I'm happy to take your questions.
So thanks, Uta, a lot for your contribution. For me, it was amazing to see that the amount of participants is rising over the years. So it looks very, very promising. And yeah, also I'm happy that in the end your experience with our Czech Institute was positive. So, but please ask your questions, raise your hands and ask your questions.
I have a comment more than a question, but this is the experience in Valencia also that we have, I think from 2 years ago, this female masterclass, and there was quite a lot of opposition at the beginning from senior, from all genders, and it was a bit complicated to implement, but it's amazing the response that it has been given by the students, and I think it is worth to just to talk to the people. I mean, for people involved here, to talk to the people that they have participated as students in a female masterclass, because I think the impact it is quite big, even if we thought that maybe this kind of positive discrimination it is not good. So I think it is worth to have this testimony. So I advise you to do that.
Yeah, so these testimonials are important for us. Of course, we cannot evaluate the impact because this is only one small factor in the whole field, and we cannot say that really a person is studying physics and going to CERN because she or he did this masterclass. But we see that the numbers are going up, and we try to be one of the factors in this field. And so it's good that IPOC started this event, and now the barriers are lower and more institutes are participating. And we also try to discuss this always raised question of discriminating boys when you arranged girls-only events.
Maybe I can have one related question. If you can compare the master classes, like the classical one, with the master classes dedicated just to girls, what's the main difference in the organization, and what's your experience?
main difference is that you try to have as much as female tutors and mentors in the institute, and usually the women are very willing to convey their experience and to talk to the girls, and I cannot imagine an institute that would not have any women who would be willing to talk to the girls. It's in terms of organizing, there is no different effort in having a usual masterclass or masterclass targeting girls. So you might include, of course, a discussion session where you talk about the situation of women in physics. This you would not have in a mixed gender masterclass. Or maybe you can even add it if you're interested, but usually people don't do it.
So I see some raised hands from Amol. There's a question.
Yeah. Yeah, hi, this is Amol. We recently held in Mumbai what could be called as a masterclass, although we didn't call it by this name. It was held for students doing their masters in their final year, and for girl students, and it was held for about 50 of them, especially for physics. The feedback that we got was the following. Firstly, this helped, I mean, having only women students class encouraged more students to ask questions. Many of them said that we would have been maybe more shy to ask questions when, if the class was a combined class, especially if there were a small number of girl students and a more number of boy students in the class. Second thing that they said really helped was the fact that, well, unfortunately, we had to hold this class online, and having classes online actually gives you some kind of anonymity in asking questions. And many of the students remarked that the anonymity that an online class offers actually helped them a lot. However, the most important part of this the session that we had, that the students said helped them, are career discussion sessions. These were the ones that we had in the evenings with various female physicists at different levels of their career, starting from postdocs all the way to very senior physicists. And that was the most popular part of this particular session. So the things that we got, this was our first attempt. We plan to have it every year. The most important parts we got was allowing people the freedom to ask a lot of questions without being hindered by peer pressure. And the second part was, of course, the career discussions. Many of the participants actually said that they had no clue of the fact that there were reasonable number of women physicists who are doing quite well in the country. So we haven't been in touch. I did not know of IPPOG so much, but maybe we will get in touch after this. I will write to you about our experiences. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing these observations and experience. And of course, we should get in contact, and we like to include you and also to learn from your experience.
Then I see a question from Clara. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I put my hand down and back up again because it's just a comment. But Uta, thank you very much for your presentation. It's really nice to see all of this work, and having worked with you on the masterclasses, I know just how much work goes into preparing these. I just wanted to follow up on your comment about Donna Strickland, because somebody did write a Wikipedia page for her before she won the Nobel Prize, just before, well, a few months before she won, but it was marked as not notable enough. And so that's why it wasn't actually a public page. So it wasn't through lack of effort, it was through the editorial process deciding that she was not notable enough to have a Wikipedia page, which I think says something that she was then awarded the Nobel Prize months later.
So even worse.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so thank you for adding this information.
So thanks, Uta, again. And I think it's time to continue. So next in the agenda, we have two talks about LHCb, and diversity-related topics, and the first speaker is Eluned. I hope I pronounced the name well. So please share your slides and go ahead. I cannot hear anything. What about others?
No, we can't hear anything either. And
yeah, I apologize. I was still muted. Let me try again. Okay, can you now hear me?
Yes, please.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I'm Eluned. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at ICHEP Aachen, and I'm going to be talking today on behalf of the LHCb, a collaboration about the early career gender and diversity office that we have at LHCb. I'm going to give a brief outline of how this office came about and its key aims. And then the rest of the talk is going to be mainly focused on the results of a recent survey that was carried out last year. The results themselves are, of course, interesting, and also we imagine that a lot of these conclusions that we find in this survey will also be relevant to other experiments within particle physics. Yeah, there we go. So first of all, the LHCb experiment. So this is one of the 4 experiments for the four main experiments at CERN. And it's specifically an experiment dedicated to the study of heavy flavor decays, so beauty and charm quarks. A little bit of information in terms of who makes up our members. So this is a map of specifically member countries. So it's not the nationality of individual members themselves, but simply the institutes for which they are working. So as of June 2020, we have around 1,400 members. And these are representing 85 institutes, which come from our 19 member countries. And you can see this map here showing these countries, which was made very recently. So this should actually be correct. So I thought it might be useful just to kind of put into context how the ECGD office, so Early Career Gender Diversity Office at LHCb, came about. So here you have a bit of a timeline from when LHCb started up to present day. And in 2013, there was a study carried out to look into gender representation at LHCb. And crucially, during the study, it was found, some of the kind of typical trends that we're quite aware of. So for example, the percentage of women that you have in the experiment decreases with age. But also particularly that LHCb at this point in time seemed to be faring worse than other experiments in terms of representation of gender, specifically of women. So this then kind of started discussion within the collaboration of how can we then try and do something to tackle this. And this was essentially the birth of the ECGD office. So that was then created in 2014 and is going on to present day. And I think it's also kind of interesting here to see also how many, LHCb is also a very quickly growing experiment in terms of we have more and more members. So here I just outlined the LHCb constitution and how the ECGD office is defined there. So it generally consists of officers of 2 different genders. These officers have 2-year terms where kind of you have kind of stage. So you have somebody for 2 years, and then after 1 year, then it changes to the new officer. Their role within the collaboration, so they are there to act as a source of advice and also kind of soft help with issues to both members and obviously also management. They attend collaboration board meetings and give input there, although they don't have a vote. And they are also responsible for continuing to collect data to help LHCb then kind of have a better awareness of the current state of gender and diversity within the collaboration. So this is the ECGD website. You have the link here. read of essentially kind of the formal definition of what the office is there to do in the website. So this is namely to deal with any issues related to any type of direct or indirect discrimination, be it on terms of grounds of gender, sexual orientation, ethnicity, disability, creed, cultural background, or other factors. And this really, in practice, they will often act as a point of contact. If you have experienced some form of discrimination or harassment, then okay, they have no hard powers, but you can, inform the officers, and they will do their best to kind of find an appropriate resolution by talking to relevant people on a kind of anonymous basis. And there's also within the ECGD office a lot of sub type of initiatives. Some of those are highlighted in this red box here, and these are going to be talked about with more detail by Martha, who's giving the talk after me. We also have an ECG meeting every LHCb weeks. The LHCb weeks are held 4 times a year. And here you can just see some of the examples of topics that we have at these meetings. So they're quite varied. We've had things on mental health. We had a very interesting meeting last September on climate change and sustainability, mentoring, gender balance. So there's a really diverse range of topics at meetings, and obviously meetings will have more than just one topic, but there tends to be a focus for each meeting at each LHCb week. So now I'm going to move on to the results of, I can't show all the results today because of time constraints, but some of the results from the recent 2019 survey carried out at LHCb. So first of all, surveys, what do we do them, and also how often have we done them? So these were carried out originally with this 2013 study that kind of kicked off the whole ECGD office, and then also in 2016, 2019. The surveys are performed anonymously, and the idea, as I've already mentioned, is to really be able to, to be seen as a tool to kind of help the collaboration make more informed decisions when it comes to early careers, gender and diversity, by providing them with information of kind of the current situation. And as I say, here I'll share an overview of some of the results. So crucially, who took part in the survey? So it was done on a voluntary basis, and the survey is obviously anonymous. 50% of active physicists took part. So active physicists, again, I mean people who are on the author list of LHCb. Perhaps not surprising, but women were much more likely to take part in general, and in terms of kind of career stage, senior respondents were most represented. Here you can see the number of respondents by gender, so people who either identify as female or male, or also non-binary, and also the number of people who responded in terms of career stage. Because this has to be kept anonymous, it's obviously important that we don't kind of bin too finely. And so for this reason, when talking about gender or splitting results in terms of gender for the rest of the presentation, I will just focus on the differences for people who identified as female and male in this survey. So the first kind of section was to do specifically with the quality of your work-life balance, flexibility, things like this. So here you see the number of people who thought that the work-life balance at their job was very reasonable. So namely, they answered 5 on a scale of 1 to 5. And as you can see, which is perhaps not overly encouraging, is that actually it was perceived as people, I mean, assuming that kind of permanent is then more at a more progressed career stage, that generally as actually your career progresses, it doesn't necessarily get better in terms of perceived work-life balance. And 14% of people who answered consider the work-life balance to be very unreasonable. The same question, instead of being split in terms of career stage, in terms of gender. And here you see also that female participants were less likely to consider work-life balance to be very reasonable. So there's also perhaps some interesting questions there to be raised. Generally, the kind of comments we received on work-life balance, so the kind of negative perceptions were things such as the amount of work damaging relationships, that it doesn't matter how many hours you then put in, that's not then really correlated necessarily to the rewards that you get out. Also, I guess, a specific problem to academia and also particle physics, which is very international. Language barriers and also remoteness at your institute, which can lead to feeling of social isolation. And also people feeling guilty to take the holiday to which they're entitled. Positive side, however, was people felt that the work was highly flexible, and if they did work long hours, it's because they just enjoyed their work. Okay, then there was a few questions on family impact. So namely, how many people have stepped back from a potential position of responsibility because they have caring responsibilities or dependence. There wasn't any specific question asked on the type of caring responsibility, but just, you know, children or elderly, dependents, etc. And again, here you see that females were more likely to not take a position of responsibility because of caring responsibilities. Another question was on maternity or paternity leave. So first of all, it was just asked whether or not you've ever taken any paternity or maternity leave during your career. And so you can see of everybody who answered, of course, you have to keep in mind that women were anywhere more likely to be kind of represented in those answering the survey, but everybody who answered, 18% had taken leave, and specifically this was 32% females and 7% male. What is perhaps the most kind of stunning result of all of this is whether or not people then perceived that there was a after they took their leave, and of course crucially on the last question it wasn't asked how long that leave was. It was any kind of leave. It could have been a week or it could have been 6 months. So when asked whether or not there was a perceived negative impact on their career after taking said leave, all of the male participants said they had perceived no negative effect, and a large percent of those people who were female who took leave felt that wasn't the case, and that they did have some negative consequences for taking that leave. Another interesting question that actually unfortunately wasn't included in the 2019 survey, but was included in the 2016 survey, which I just show again here because yeah, I think it's interesting. So whether or not you have a partner, so most people within the collaboration do have a partner, and it was generally found that that females are more likely to then follow their partner for their job. That was also found in this survey. But what was also asked last time was if you have a partner, were they in particle physics? And perhaps not surprisingly, given already kind of the gender imbalance within particle physics, but female physicists were much more likely to have a partner within particle physics, which also perhaps raises questions in terms of perhaps women are more likely to face the two-body problem in terms of both partners being in academia compared to their male colleagues. So again, general comment, like the kind of what was left in the open box for comments on family impact. There were maybe unsurprisingly a lot of focus in terms of childcare, balancing childcare and work life. So there were requests, for example, that people could make a more concerted effort to restrict meetings outside of kind of school pickup times of 10 till 3. There was also requests specifically for when people have to travel for LHCb weeks and other such stuff at CERN, for CERN to be more child friendly. However, there were also counter comments that people were worried if that CERN became more child friendly. For example, if you allow like small children in this foyer or in the hostel, that then the noise or other effects can then have kind of a detrimental on the kind of work environment of people who are there without children. And crucially also that you can also at CERN just make childcare easier for external meetings. Two other points which I think are potentially, I mean, perhaps this also comes more from institutes rather than LHCb itself, but I think something which kind of could be formally driven more by institutes and maybe shouldn't be so hard to do is to make it easier for people to have part-time work, and also just try and drive towards a more equal maternity and paternity leave. So finally, some points on career in academia. So people were asked whether or not they wanted to stay in academia, and if they didn't want to stay, why? So perhaps also unsurprisingly, most people who were asked, also particularly bearing in mind that senior respondents are more representative, but most people who were asked, they said they wanted to stay. People who didn't want to stay generally quoted work-life balance, stress, poor remuneration. And there was also some questions in terms of how well equipped people are to then kind of go on to the next path within academia. And there, as you can see, actually, the majority of people didn't feel like they were well informed in terms of how one kind of progresses along the academic path. So again, here comments on what the ECGD can do to help change this. So there were suggestions, for example, to have workshops on leadership, CV writing, and also crucially grant writing, which can be quite a daunting thing when it's the first time we do it. To track and publish statistics, kind of more detailed statistics in terms of, within LHCb, what is the typical number of years after your PhD in which people then leave. Also, which I think is a good point in terms of, you have a lot of different grants and schemes depending on country, and it's not always obvious when these deadlines are and how they work, so to have some kind of centralized page for that. And also to, bearing in mind that the majority of people won't stay in academia, to try and have more accommodation to prepare people who have done their PhD or postdocs to then be better prepared for and leaving the industry. So there's already been some responses to this from the ECGD. Martha will talk more specifically also in the next talk about some of the current initiatives from the ECGD. But for example, there's been an effort to create a LinkedIn page for people who were at LHCb and who have now left, which then gives people an insight into some of the possibilities of careers they could have outside of academia if they then choose to leave the experiment. Very briefly also, there were some questions on mentoring. There was a mentor scheme run by LHCb where essentially you kind of have well, there still is, but where you have a list of people who are willing to mentor somebody. However, this had no uptake. So there's been some, the ECGD has invited people in who have had experience of very successful mentor schemes and also discussed with other experiments. And again, Martha's going to talk a bit more about the various mentoring ideas in her talk. So then in terms of gender diversity within your institute specifically, so it was found that about a third of people had attended gender and diversity related training. Of those that did, the vast majority was because it was compulsory. Perhaps, well, you can half empty, half full of this is good or not, but so 38% of people said that after going to training, their attitudes and actions changed. So some examples of things that people felt were very useful that were learned during training is how to, for example, have specific procedures to try and minimize unconscious bias when hiring, a more heightened awareness of the language you use and the impact it can have on people, and a general kind of more heightened awareness of your own implicit and unconscious bias. And the ECGD, kind of within terms of the experiment, is currently organizing to have both diversity and leadership training for people who have positions of responsibility within the collaborations and management and conveners. Again, in terms of experiences at institutes, people were asked to kind of comment if they had particularly good or bad experiences. So good experiences where people appreciated there was always female representation on selection panels, that there's mandatory training, and also that there was clear support for LGBTQ+ rights within the institute. Bad experiences, some noted that they felt that it was an added burden, the fact that that you have to have kind of a good representation of all minority groups within a selection panels, etc., and that can then have an exaggerated work burden on those people who are in those minority groups. There was a few comments about specifically kind of socializing with the group and that being based around alcohol, which has obviously, the potential to exclude different groups based on culture or also gender, an assumption of people's gender pronouns, and also overtly sexist comments. So there's then, some discussion on how one can then try and reduce this kind of bias and discrimination that people feel they face. perhaps it's always kind of the most obvious solution to try and educate people more. So there's hence this kind of stress on perhaps there should be more training also within LHCb. Also to kind of clear up any confusion, to state clearly what the policy is when hiring from institutes, because there's perception sometimes that people are somehow a token diversity hire, which is generally not the case. And in terms of what the office at LHCb itself can do, so again, it's providing training, having specific guidelines on how to write an unbiased reference letter, and a more concerted effort to move towards gender neutrality, in particular, to be inclusive people who identify as non-binary gender. So in terms of also specific overt harassment and discrimination, this was also asked and also split in terms of gender. And so the question was essentially, have you ever faced any kind of discrimination based on your gender, ethnic origin, sexual identity, sexual orientation, disability, body shape, health, including mental health or age or any other reason? And again, here you see that, okay, 15% of those who responded had experienced this, and females were more likely to. And notably, this level of harassment hasn't changed since the last survey. This is unfortunately the same. Although it should be pointed out, this isn't any work environment, so it doesn't necessarily mean it happened within LHCb, but within kind of the context of work. Again, kind of similar, have you ever felt uncomfortable, perhaps not overt discrimination, but just because of a language used when at work? And again, I mean, people are generally more likely to have at some point felt uncomfortable because of some language used, but again, females were more likely to experience this. Recurrent themes that have been given in terms of harassment and discrimination. So there's quite a few points in terms of language. Of course, we're a very international environment and language is always going to be an issue, but essentially discussion languages that a participant can't therefore follow in a conversation, and this doesn't exclude English. So also, conversation within English speakers who then perhaps don't use kind of particularly standardized English can also then exclude people who are non-native English speakers. As always, the guise of humor that kind of based on either sexist, homophobic or religious persuasion. And this feeling of being tokenized, particularly by women, to be the representative then of your whole gender. Some final points on in terms of disclosure at work. So crucially, 8 of the respondents, so 6.4%, stated that they were uncomfortable to disclose their sexual orientation at work. So it's clearly an issue. Also, physical and mental health problems. So 24% of people who responded said they were uncomfortable to disclose some given mental or physical condition at work. There's also some points on kind of, I call it geographical discrimination, not necessarily the right term, but kind of specific issues and challenges faced by people who work a long way away from CERN. So people felt that, this is a disadvantage because of time zones, because it's much also harder to travel to CERN, even for LHCb weeks. And there were specific impressions, for example, that not being kind of there, like physically, that there is some, people may miss out on kind of more private, informal chats where even though they're informal, kind of formal or important decisions are made. So kind of just to summarize many of the various themes of everything throughout the survey, there is also, which I haven't really touched on, but there's also quite a few kind of general comments just made about also mental health, and that this should also, there should be more awareness of this. There was a meeting by the ICHEP, I think last year on this issue, but that people should, this issue should be embraced more fully by both LHCb and also institutes, and people should be aware that employers are also have a responsibility to essentially not put people in an environment at work which is likely to have a negative impact on their mental health. Suggesting, but therefore, for to invite professionals to talk about solutions and good practices, not just mental health, but just generally. So also taking, for example, inviting people from industry to talk about all of these issues, so also gender and diversity and inclusion, etc. And also, again, specifically on mental health, to have more sessions to really reduce the stigma and make it more normal for people to talk about any specific mental health issues they may be facing. So that brings me on to my conclusions. So yeah, I've given a brief outline of essentially the goal and the reason for the existence of the ECGD office at LHCb. So it's existed now for 5 or 6 years. It is crucially, it's always an evolving office and always looking essentially at ways to kind of improve outcomes and to have kind of more effective approach. And yeah, we carried this survey last year, and I've just presented some of the results today. Thank you.
So thanks, Eluned, a lot for your talk. So everyone, please raise your hand in the chat. Ah, there's one from Matt. Please go ahead.
Okay, so firstly, thank you very much for the very nice talk. So I just wanted to ask about the surveys, and you've carried out surveys before. So have you kept the surveys the same, or have the surveys changed in light of experience of giving the previous surveys?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So generally, so a lot of time is taken each kind of each survey to think of the most appropriate questions. People can also suggest, also kind of other members of the collaboration also suggest questions. Generally, there is a large overlap, but there are, I think there have been some new questions added for this survey, though I can't remember off the top of my head which ones. So they do tend to be similar such that you can compare, but there are occasional kind of minor differences. For example, there wasn't this question this time about whether or not your partner is an academia, for example, but generally they tend to follow a broad theme, but essentially where, you know, if the current new officers feel it more appropriate to include certain questions, then they will be included, but they're consistent enough to be able to make kind of meaningful comparisons. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
So if there are no more questions, maybe we can continue with the second talk about LHCb, diversity and inclusion topics. It's by Marta, I think.
Yes, hi.
Mm-hmm. So please share your slides and go ahead. Yeah, can you make them full screen, please?
Are they not full screen?
Okay. There's just small menu on top, but I think it's fine. So maybe go ahead.
Okay, so thank you. So my name is Martha. I am a PhD student at the University of Manchester, and today I will be talking about some early career initiatives in LHCb. So this will build on the previous talk about the Early Career Gender and Diversity Office, and focus on the early career aspects, including a couple of initiatives I'm involved in organising, such as the LHCb UK student meetings and the LHCb starter kit. Okay, so just briefly, the Early Career Gender and Diversity Office was mentioned in the previous talk, but this oversees the well-being and working environment of LHCb members. The focus is on early career and gender and diversity, in particular issues related to discrimination on the grounds of gender, sexual orientation, cultural background, ethnicity, and some other factors. So there are 2 ECGD officers which serve a 2-year term, and they are picked by the collaboration board and are reasonably senior members of the collaboration. So as most of this has already been covered, I will now move on and focus on the early career activities within LHCb and some of the other LHC experiments. Okay, so LHCb has some prizes for exceptional early career scientists, including the Early Career Scientist Award and the LHCb Thesis Award. And these awards are given to early career scientists who have made a contribution to LHCb through operations or physics analysis or some other exceptional contribution. And these aim to give young members of the collaboration help in forwarding their career and give them recognition of their achievements. So it is also worth mentioning that different experiments have different definitions of what an early career scientist is. So some LHC experiments define this by age or by time since finishing a PhD, but this can be tricky to define because people may come to the field later than others or have a career break. So for this reason, LHCb does not, as of yet, have a fixed definition of what constitutes an early career scientist. Okay, so why do we need these early career initiatives? When you start as a PhD student, there is a lot to learn, and this can be overwhelming. Some new students may have little to no computer programming or software experience, and they have no training for their PhD, but can be expected to teach themselves this computing and software skills needed for their PhD. Some documentation and tutorials do exist, but they can be out of date or even not working. And also, students may not know who to go to ask for help or to ask questions. So on LHCb, we do have these mailing lists where you can ask questions, but I think new students are often reluctant to write an email to these mailing lists for fear of asking a stupid or trivial question. So as a result of these problems, new students can often waste a lot of time trying to navigate these tutorials and learn new experiment-specific software. And it is worth mentioning there can also be some other issues to do with joining a large international collaboration and meeting new people and networking maybe for the first time and building a community within your collaboration. Okay, so the LHCb UK student meetings is the first thing I will mention. These are aimed at PhD students on LHCb, and although it has UK in the title and it is organised by a group of UK PhD students, it is actually open to any LHCb PhD students. So the meeting consists of an informal talk by a more senior member of the collaboration, which usually gives an overview of a particular topic within LHCb. So here is a list of some of the previous talks we've had, which include different areas such as upgrades and simulation, and both physics and technical aspects of the detector and analysis. And there is also some non-LHCb and non-physics specific topics such as outreach and science in parliament, and gender and diversity. And to these, we also welcome students from other experiments. So for more information, you can visit the Wiki page or email one of the current organizers. Okay, so similarly, the starter talk is also aimed at early career academics and is also a talk by a more senior member of the collaboration. So the starter talk is held once every LHCb week, which happens 4 times a year. And the aim is to create an informal environment where students feel comfortable asking questions and engaging in discussion. So the format is a Blackboard talk where the speaker may write down information, followed by an open discussion with the students. And the aim here is to create a more informal environment and a slower pace than with a PowerPoint presentation. And I think this seems to work quite well. Okay, so moving on to the LHCb starter kit. This was started in 2015 by a group of LHCb PhD students as a way of addressing some of the problems which I was mentioning earlier. So the starter kit aims to address these by providing introductory tutorials on computer programming, such as Python and Bash and Git, and also LHCb specific software tutorials. So the aims are to give a solid starting point to newcomers in LHCb software and teach good practices in computing and improve software literacy. And it is aimed at first-year PhD students, but master students or more senior members of the collaboration are also welcome. And if you are unsure whether this course is for you or for a student, you can have a look at the material online. Okay, so part of the ethos of the starter kit is that it is started by and run by early career scientists. So the teachers and the helpers of the lessons are usually PhD students or early postdocs. And PhD students who have previously participated in the starter kit are encouraged to sign up to help or teach in the following years. So it is usually organized by 2 or 3 more experienced PhD students who usually change from year to year to ensure that the organization continues in the subsequent cohorts. And it is also worth noting that you can gain a lot from volunteering to teach or help at the starter kit, because you can refresh yourself on the material that you may have learned in previous years, and teaching it to new students often helps consolidate that knowledge. So the material is maintained collaboratively on GitHub and is kept up to date mostly by pull requests and contributions from students and early career scientists. And this is important for us to keep the lessons extremely well documented and also open source, so that students who cannot come to CERN for the workshop are able to access the material. Okay, so the starter kit program consists of the starter kit and the impact kit. And the starter kit is held in October or November each year, and the impact kit is held in May or June. So the starter kit consists of 2 days of more general computing lessons, which are done in collaboration with Alice and ICHEP. And we have about 40 participants from LHCb, and then probably about 40 again from Alice and ICHEP. And then the last 3 days are experiment-specific software tutorials. And the impact kit is also aimed at first-year PhD students and covers more advanced tutorials in LHCb software. And this is a 3-day workshop where the last day consists of a hackathon, where the students will work individually or in pairs and present their work to the group at the end of the day. So another important aspect of the starter kit is that it gives the new students an opportunity to meet their fellow students, to network. So for that reason, we also have a social event on the penultimate or last day of the starter kit and impact kit. So the starter kit has received some excellent feedback from the students and also aims to improve each year by looking at the comments given by students in the feedback forms. So this feedback is an example from last year's impact kit. And the feedback for the teaching and the lessons is generally very good. And I've included a couple of comments about what the students liked about the lessons and also what could be improved. So from looking through all the comments, it was there were generally some positive comments about the hands-on nature of the workshop and the quality of teaching. Okay, so moving on to another initiative we have within LHCb. This is the Laura Bassi initiative. And this is a reasonably new junior-led initiative which aims to bring together people who are interested in tackling the gender diversity issue within LHCb by a bottom-up approach. So this is an informal network which aims to create an environment where people can have discussion and discuss new ideas in tackling these issues, as well as sharing information about career opportunities and providing advice and support. So the Laura Bassi initiative is open to anyone who feels that they will gain from being part of this network, or who is interested in contributing to the gender diversity issues which it addresses. And it's named after Laura Bassi, who was an Italian physicist and was the first woman to have a doctorate in science. So we've set up a Mattermost channel to share information and organize events. So we've had a couple of discussions at LHCb weeks where we've met over lunch and discussed some of these issues. So the last one was on imposter syndrome, which was really very interesting. Okay, so as Eluned mentioned in her previous talk, the LHCb does have a mentoring program which aims to put in touch early career scientists with more experienced colleagues. And the mentoring could be in various forms, such as regular group or one-to-one meetings, or a more limited or one-off interaction, for example, with help with a CV or a job application. So as was mentioned in the previous talk, though, this has not been successful, and we have not had people sign up for it as we would have hoped. So the ECGD office is currently looking into how to implement this mentoring scheme more successfully, including having the option to have a mentor from another experiment. Okay, so in addition to the early career initiatives in LHCb, the other LHC experiments also have a comprehensive program of early career initiatives, including those organised individually and those organised collaboratively between all 4 experiments. So on the left here is the respective early career boards and committees for Atlas, CMS and ALICE. So the difference between these and LHCb is that the early career boards of these 3 experiments are separate to the diversity offices, whereas on LHCb they are combined into the ECGD office. So each of these early career boards organises a range of events individually and also those arranged between all 4 experiments. Some examples of these are the LHCb Soft Skills Workshop, which includes presentations and Q&As on certain topics which are particularly relevant to young scientists, such as CV and academic writing and working from home. The LHC Career Networking events consist of presentations and Q&As by LHC alumni which have left academia. And the ice cream events are a series of informal short talks by experts for a general audience. Okay, so I will mention how some of these initiatives have evolved or changed during these times of the coronavirus pandemic. So obviously all these events that I've mentioned have been online over the last few months since these social distancing measures have been put into place. And this includes the LHCb student talks and the LHC soft skills workshops. So these have been on Zoom and they've been very well attended and well received. So in particular, I will also mention that the Impact Kit did not go ahead in person this year, unfortunately. But there's a sort of substitute. We organised a series of student talks which were focusing on the topics which would have been covered in the Impact Kit and which were of more of a hands-on nature. So we had a speaker on these topics and they would give a presentation, but also have more of a hands-on session with the students, such as sharing their screen and sharing bits of code, for example. Also, the ECGD office has organised these virtual coffee breaks, which people from LHCb are able to join and have an informal coffee and chat with their colleagues. And I think that these events are particularly important for early career scientists who may be working from home and have less access to these informal discussions with colleagues and less access to people which they can ask for help. Okay, so this concludes my talk. I hope I have conveyed the importance of some of these early career initiatives and given an overview of those already existing within LHCb, such as the LHCb student meetings and the LHCb starter kit, and also those organised by all 4 LHC experiments, such as the soft skills workshops. So I leave here a list of useful links and contacts. So please get in touch if you feel like you have something to contribute. And thank you for listening, and I'm happy to take any questions.
So thanks a lot, Marta, for this interesting talk. Maybe just let me start with the questions. Do you have some data? What is the interest of women in participating in this starter kit tutorials? If there is some difference, like if males or females are more interested in visiting them?
Actually, that's a good point. We haven't taken this data. Anecdotally, I think it's probably about what you would expect of the percentage of PhD students in general, so I guess it's about 20%. But we didn't take the data, but that's a good point.
Yeah, I believe it's a great opportunity to start with in the collaboration, these starter kits. So are there any other questions? I see one from Matt. Go ahead.
Yes, so again, thank you for the presentation. So I just wanted to ask about the starter kits and in particular how the planning of current and future starter kits may be affected by the new reality of COVID-19 and having to hold online meetings. So I know from other experiments which have events like starter kits, then the gathering students together to meet each other and some of the social aspect to form a community and sense of inclusion is an important part of the starter kit workshops, and that's maybe not something which will be the same or has to be addressed differently for online meetings. And so I've wondered if you have thought about how things will change if you have to move to online only starter kit workshops and similar meetings.
Yeah, so I haven't really thought about this much as of yet. So as I mentioned, the impact kit was sort of a smaller scale. When it was online, we had a series of talks rather than like a full 3-day workshop and hackathon. So unfortunately, the students didn't really have a social event for the impact kit this year. I guess the starter kit is due to happen in October or November. So we will have to see how things evolve, whether that's going to be able to be held at CERN or not. If not, I think we will have it online, and yeah, I'm not sure about the social aspect. I mean, there's been these ideas which have happened at other conferences, such as virtual coffee breaks and quizzes and games and things. So, you know, maybe we could do something like that, but I haven't discussed it with the other organizers yet.
I see next question. Oh, please.
Sorry, yeah, I was just going to say thank you for the answer. So we had a similar type of event in Belle too, which was scheduled for June, which was cancelled. So we're currently planning that our next type of this event will have to be online only, and we're trying to work out how we can try and get the same kind of benefit from an online only event. So it's not an easy thing to manage.
Yeah.
I think the next question was from Jeanette. Can you please go ahead?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, you mentioned about the student meetings. There was the UK student meetings. Would you be able to comment? I'm not familiar with how many institutions that would cover for the UK meetings.
It's 10 or 12, I think.
Oh wow!
Something like that. So,
yeah, so
UK students is quite small, which is one of the reasons why we wanted to open it up to other students as well.
Yeah, so I organise, so I'm also Belle too, and I organise some of the Australian meetings for an Australia-wide kind of Belle 2 meeting, and there are only 3 nodes, 3 institutions in Australia that work with Belle 2, but I often find motivation can be quite difficult because it can seem like for a student, you know, they've got a lot of deadlines to meet, they've got subjects to take and things like that. There's also just kind of a general, because they're very early in their work, they then don't necessarily have the same pride over it and wanting to show and represent, like show what they want to show their work. And also that couple that with the fact it can almost become like an additional meeting. So it's almost like an additional workload on top of working group meetings and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So is this kind of sentiment felt by the students? Is that something you can comment on?
So I think when it was just advertised to UK PhD students, and we have these meetings in person at CERN and then on videos, so they were not particularly well attended, like maybe 5 or 10 people in person and then 5 or 10 people online. And this is one of the reasons why we wanted to advertise it more widely. In particular, when we had some student talks just after lockdown happened and after CERN closed online, we advertised it to the whole collaboration, and these were very well attended by like 80 people. So yeah, I'm not sure why. Maybe once we started working from home, people were more likely to connect and engage in these meetings and discussions. And maybe we advertised it better, I think, as well.
Thanks.
There was next question from Karolos.
Yes, hello again. It was mostly a comment, actually, since I heard a few things that you were wondering how to do the social aspects of, your online events. We at the port, but also Remotely Green, which is an entity that I mentioned in my talk, we have quite some experience there in providing almost, not as same as physical really, because that's impossible yet, but providing a good way for people to engage. And we've had quite a good success rates. We tried this with the WebFest. We tried this at the Versus Virus Hackathon. There were people who really got excited about what Remotely Green was doing. So if you're interested, it was mostly advertising, but I think that if you want to look them up, I think it's something that could benefit the social interactions about those online events. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Go to the discussion, which is next on the agenda. So thanks again to Marta.
Thank you.
So concerning the discussion, maybe let me start with yeah, I have it.
I have also some comments.
Yes.
It is something related to that it has been said this morning, and I am a bit concerned about it, because it is supposed that the fact that you have online conferences, for instance, for people having small kids, maybe it is a good thing because they can give talks. But I think this is a bit tricky, because the point is that it is a bit. I think it is a bit complicated to prepare a talk if you have to take care also of the family things. So I'm not so sure that it is something positive or negative. At the end, if it is going against these people doing both works, trying to do a talk with it at the same time that taking care of the families. So I'm not so sure. This was broke this morning, and it's something to take into account, I think.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think this is the comment I made, and I completely agree. I think I made it because I saw that somebody was able to attend from home, but the fact that they're also doing childcare at the same time means they're likely not able to fully focus on the talks, and having to juggle is very difficult. But then also in-person events means you have to organize childcare. And so I agree that in both cases, it's very difficult and challenging for people.
Yeah, but maybe this can be an optative question. So I think, for instance, to have on-site conferences can be good for other reasons. Apart from the environment, but maybe there could be options that if you don't want, you can do the talks. If you have no possibilities to travel because of childcare or whatever, you can do the talks, or money or whatever, you can do the talks online. But I think to reduce the fact that, women or whoever has to be at home taking care about the family responsibilities at the same time of working. I mean, I think all of us have seen that it is not working in this COVID period. I guess this is my opinion.
So I wanted to mention something related to this because we've been looking at this kind of issues in many contexts. And one thing I was wondering, because we are trying to work on the concept of a new conference type, so where basically every talk would be recorded and then people would be able to look at the agenda at their own pace. I don't have the pitch deck and I don't want to show it now, but basically people would be able to look at the program, make up all the talks they want to see, and then you only join the speakers for dedicated Q&A sessions like the one we're doing now. So imagine basically all what we did in the last 2 hours, 3 hours, we would basically be done at your own pace, which also means that the speaker can upload the talk whenever they have a better time, but also you can watch the talk when is a better time for you. And you only join then for 1 hour or 30 minutes of a condensed discussion. And we've had different feedback from different fields. I've also asked some fellow particle physicists, but I wanted to try to understand if this is something that would at least alleviate the concerns that you mentioned, Arantxa, or Claire, Clara, sorry. So it's just an open curiosity if it's a route worth exploring or is something that would have its other drawbacks, you think?
From my point of view, I think it is always good to have something recorded and then you can manage your time and if you want to check, and then for me, I think this is a very good idea. I don't know if it is effective at the end because it is difficult to find time, but at least you have the option. So I think if you are open and then you have the option for thing, I think it is much better. It has the bad point that you are only watching the things that you are supposed to be interested. And for instance, as compared to on-site conferences, sometimes you go, I mean, you are in a talk which you receive a lot of information that you are not expecting to have it. So, I mean, it is always
so we thought about that, and the issue there we thought was a bit like the YouTube advertisements you don't want to see, you know, like between talks you like to get one of those that was recommended, and there of course you have to use some machine learning algorithm or something, but we're not sure it's good working, but it's a good point. Thanks for the suggestion.
Karolos, I also remember you mentioned this virtual coffee breaks. Maybe
yes,
can you elaborate it a bit?
So
have you tried to test it on some real conference or somewhere?
Right. So far we've tried to organize it. We use it in our hackathon since a couple of times. You know, this whole thing, Remotely Green, has started fairly recently in the hackathon at CERN in October last year. But so we far, for example, with the WebFest, we've given the opportunity for the summer students at CERN this year to randomly meet on predefined topics. So basically the platform, you can try it out every week. There is a weekly thing. I will probably write it in the Mattermost, where basically you say which topics you want to talk with. And then at a given time, 4 people are put together in a room for 5 minutes. They introduce themselves, they can talk on a topic, and you get to know each other. And then you go in slots of these 5 minutes into 5 minutes, and you meet 5 or 6 different people. So it's more like a speed dating type of encounter. But we're also working on other solutions, which is basically, for example, the ability to join a virtual place where you kind of, for example, through captioning, know what's being discussed in a given room. And so you can join. It's a bit like when you overhear somebody at a real coffee break, and then you know the topic that are being discussed in a room, and then you can join. The real difficulty is that in today's interaction, it's very difficult to have a discussion meaningful with more than 4 or 5 participants virtually, because you never know when to interrupt. You don't see everyone. There are commercial solutions like HoloLens and others that offer you the opportunity to use virtual reality, but these are for the moment very expensive. So we're exploring this, but this is really an exploratory phase. While what we do with Remotely Green is very low tech. I mean, basically it requires a Zoom equivalent called Jitsi. It's open source, but basically it's very easy to set up. So actually, I will advertise some of our weekly meetings that we do, like to test out the platform if people are interested.
So Hannah, did you want to go?
Sorry. So thanks. Yeah, I think that this is a good idea. It definitely allows for the issue that we talked about with people wanting to attend the diversity and also the physics side at the same time. Like ICHEP, we're able to do that because of the replay sessions. So this is great. But also your suggestion of live discussion times. It's a good idea, but it still has limitations because of time zones, and like the discussion still has issue of childcare or dependence in that way. So perhaps, like as you suggested, like having some like chat room that is like just for that talk. But also, I don't know if you're familiar with like live commenting. Perhaps there is some way to have live commenting within a video that then the speaker could like later address. I don't know.
That's a good point.
Just some suggestions.
We didn't look at live commenting. I think it's a very good point. Thank you.
Yeah, so I was going to make a comment. So I like the suggestion of live commenting. So for the chat rooms, I think it's a nice nice idea. I would ask that some accessibility and some thought for example, autistic colleagues or colleagues who are not comfortable necessarily being matched with random people. And for example, what happens if there's somebody at a conference who has harassed somebody else and then they get matched in a private chat, and that could be incredibly awkward. And I mean, I know it's virtual, but that, you know, harassment can take place virtually. So that would have to be taken into consideration, and maybe people could very confidentially mark people they don't want to be matched with without it being alerted to the organizers why or even who they've said. Because I think I would, if, for example, I was going through a list and I wanted to mark people I didn't want to be matched with, I don't want everyone to know, because there may be a reason that I haven't said anything.
So yeah, this is very interesting and a topic we actually addressed a bit. It's currently we're more in the mode we take as little information on our participants as we can.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, okay, we get their LinkedIn profile still to try to see which sphere where they work, because then you can know with whom to match them more effectively. But the topic has come up, and one of the ways we do after each encounter, you can grade your encounter with a certain person. So first we chose to have 4 people, so the likelihood of this happening, you would have to have like really 3 harassers in randomly paired together with one person that they all harass would be difficult, and still the same person you can give feedback on the encounter, and so you could say it's very bad. So presumably people who are always bad in their encounter points to people that are not behaving properly. And this is the kind of thing. But obviously there is this trade-off always, but we're trying to address it. But it's a good point that you bring it up. As for the randomness, yes, we are aware that randomness doesn't always work. To be honest, I also personally don't like it too much. It's cool for a few times, but then you get easily bored because you spend your time reintroducing yourself over and over and over, and you know, it becomes disruptive. So for that, we were hoping to use, as you use today as well, the live captioning to really try to see, you know, what topics are being talked, and then people can join when they want or if they want. Now, I have to admit another thing, which is people with a bit more acute, I don't know, severe acute, I don't know, probably not the right term, but like a bit more difficulty in communicating. I know that the online aspects are overwhelming. And for example, I mean, another thing, which is a side note, whenever we have meetings now, we always turn on camera, which shows more an inclusion. And what we observed, and this is experimented, it's not like a guess, is that there is a divide in the gender gap where basically who likes to be on camera or not. So the males usually don't have problems in turning on their cameras and being on screen. And while we observe that on average, women tend to shut off their camera for whatever reason. Maybe there's a kid in the back.
Just to say, I can send you a study that shows that women have been asked to dress differently for Zoom meetings. It's not necessarily in physics, but there is a pressure for being on camera.
which is insane, but to dress specifically, I mean, you have to dress normally in any case, but good point. But I tell you what happened in our team. And one thing that I found also very important, I think it's an important thing to address related to earlier with the kids, is who cares if a kid comes in a room by accident? I mean, I think it's something we've seen from time to time. Of course, you have to be able to work, but you know, this kind of warnings are good to say that, okay, a kid can come, okay, fine, he comes and that's it, or he.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So just a couple of follow-up points to what you said. So with the kids, so there was a really great example. 2 interviews on British television happened in the same day, one on Sky News and one on BBC News, and both were women presenters who had a child come in during their interview. And on the BBC, the interviewer even engaged with the child and asked what their name was and had little dialogue and then carried on. And it was seen so positively. And in the Sky News interview, the anchor just shut the interview down and said, "Oh, well, we see that you're busy," in a sort of dismissive, you're not available for this. And so that was much. So just, you know, yeah, it happens. And then very quickly, so I know that for in-person conferences, there's a traffic light system that's sometimes implemented, which indicates how much somebody wants to engage. So it's green, orange, and red means that I don't want to be approached. Orange means I only want to be approached by people I know. And green is like, I'm happy to talk to a lot of people. And then, yeah, very quickly, I don't like any analogies of sort of dating and dating apps, but maybe we can borrow from sort of the Tinder idea of where you swipe on people without them knowing, and then you have to have a match before people are matched together. And in that way, somebody would just not swipe on somebody they were not wanting to have a conversation with. And then the data is not kept because it's only a temporary question. That might be something useful.
No, these are very, very good points. Just to clarify one thing about the encounter, the light is interesting, but in this case, basically the platform is such that you can join at any time and you're matched in the next round of matching. So if you don't want to join, you just don't connect. So it's more of this thing, but actually there is an idea there in the rooms to try to see. Thank you. I think sorry, I'm thinking out loud here. I should shut up. Sorry.
And also one thing, just from my experience, I would like to be able to look into a room before going in, like you have a window on a door. And because for some of the poster sessions in LHCp, I wanted to talk to a presenter, but I didn't know if they were busy. And so I didn't want to turn up into a room and then I wanted to be able to kind of see the conversation without really joining or without. So something like that would be great, but I'm just.
So for that, we're working on a virtual avatar thing where basically there is the aggregations and then you see people moving. And it's actually very important in also seeing how connections happen. And for example, we noticed, for example, that doing 3 or 4 random talks is okay. But after the 5th, people start being, it's too much for the system. You've done too much of them. And then you start noticing degrading in quality of the experience. So these kind of things we track. Of course, GDPR complying, but it's interesting. Yeah, thanks, Clara.
Thanks.
I think we can switch to other topics unless there is something interesting, because I don't want to monopolize this.
Yeah, I think concerning the conferences, one extra topic is the accessibility, like with the software or software tools which are used. For example, now you notice that we use Zoom, which is not allowed in some countries, which are on the US sanction list. So, of course, I would always prefer to use open source solution, but sometimes they are not as good as the commercial products. Or maybe I can hear your opinion about this. What is your experience?
I agree, but I also find Zoom, the fact that lots of people are using it makes it more accessible in terms of people don't have to learn a new software and download a new software every time. But obviously it's not perfect, and there are these restrictions which are, you know, must be taken into account because we don't want to exclude whole countries from participating.
Yes, I remember for some local conferences we had issues that some participants were not able to enter the country because they have not got the visa. So this can be also problems, and so with the remote conferences, this often better. But for me, I would advocate like the mixed conference where there is possibility to join also remotely or ask questions, and where the conference or the sessions are recorded. So sometimes there is some discovery presented, but nobody noticed at the time. So then it can be interesting to see the recordings in the future for the recursive purposes.
Does anyone know if Mattermost is available for the countries that have been excluded? So like the combination of YouTube and Mattermost could allow an equivalent solution for this?
I think, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, no, go.
I was just going to say that I think Mattermost is open source, right? And we have a CERN instance of it, which makes it more likely that it's going to be available everywhere, but I don't know for certain.
Right.
Yeah, so I can comment on that. So we've set up an instance for the WebFest specifically and separate from the CERN one, and it's quite easy to set up. Of course, it requires a bit of technical skills, but like Clara said, it's an open source product, so you can install it on a machine. So this basically then boils down whether the website where the Mattermost is hosted will be banned or not. And usually you can find good ways for it to not be banned. Which is better than Slack, because I know Slack, when it's banned, because Slack uses always slack.com for their workspaces, you can block it. While for Mattermost, it's basically, you have to block the server where it runs. And so I think the combination of Mattermost would be working everywhere where there are these issues, especially if it's a low profile, because also experience we got during the board hackathon on humanitarian topics is that the big firewalls in some countries which trying to block traffic usually care about what's really large traffic. So if something attracts 100 people, they don't really care about it.
Yeah, maybe let me change a bit the topic, but it's yeah, a bit related, and I want to discuss the sustainability. I saw that it was mentioned in few talks, at least in the talk of Karolos a bit, I think, and also in some other one, since yeah, I believe that the rising level of the CO2 emission is really an issue, and we as a physics community cannot be blind to it, and we should take some action and also some personal responsibility. So what's your opinion about this?
It's maybe interesting just to relay what was the reaction when we had this. So we had last September the LHCb week in Oxford, and there was essentially somebody invited to then kind of, I mean, it was a general, actually quite physics-based talk about climate change, but then there was a very long discussion about exactly this point of is it validated that, particularly within the kind of the international nature of particle physics, they have such a large CO2 footprint for conferences or whatever, and long haul flights, etc. And there, I mean, I think it was interesting because there was definitely, I think, like a dividing of views from either people who were like, yeah, no, this should be a focus. We should make it more normal to attend a conference remotely. And I think that is certainly true, not just because of sustainable reasons, but, it should be possible that you can say, I will give this talk, because there's a lot of conferences still where you say I will only like attend remotely, then you're essentially not allowed to attend. But there's also kind of this strain of this feeling that, like, in the big run, is it then consistent? Air travel is an issue, but then there are also a lot of other things you could argue that people can be doing that then, I don't know, for example, a classic one is eating meat, for example, or other stuff where, so there's kind of a little bit of a feel of like, is it kind of consistent to put so much kind of emphasis on air travel when at the same time it's, you don't really try to restrict other, I mean, arguably that's a very work-related kind of thing, but like this idea of it really is a bit kind of self-flagellation when it's not such a really going to make a kind of large impact just because of the nature of particularly long haul flights. It's actually quite a small contribution. I think there's generally a very solid agreement that, for example, it should be allowed, which I think is a good point. I think that's also an issue within our institute, that like short haul flights are often cheaper than taking the train, even though you might rather take the train. And that is an area, for example, where you could try and make it more normal that people just say, yes, I could take the flight, but I choose to take the train, even though it's been more expensive, because that is then better for the environment, and that, you know, and that to be kind of an okay reason to like take a slightly more expensive mode of travel. But there's more kind of diversion of views as to whether or not then you should then not allow like very large international, because also that's a bit kind of more restrictive to people who have to take long haul flights because they live in a country which is a long way away. So there was a lot of kind of strong opinions within LHCb there, but it was an interesting discussion.
Yeah, I can see my experience from DESI in Germany, where we struggled to have an opportunity to choose a train, even if the ticket is more expensive than a plane. And I think in the end we succeed, and the travel office was accepting this option. But of course, some people are not happy to spend more time in train. I think the nice option is to travel overnight, because at least one can spare some time.
Yeah, I guess it's depending. Yeah, how long the train ride is, I guess, is then the question of what's unacceptable. I guess like 8 hours, 9 hours, okay. If it's 20 hours, it's a.
So I would like to add one point to this discussion. So we are all in this field since quite some years, and we have met at conferences, we've been to conferences, and now we have changed to online conferences, and this is okay for us. But imagine people coming new to the field, so PhD people who are new and who can only do virtual conferences and never get the chance to have all these social events and activities. And just imagine a coffee break at ICHEP in Seoul, where there was like a beehive, people being around, and now we are sitting here and we virtually don't get any connection to the other 2,000 something people which are at the conference. So it's completely different. So we have to be careful to say it's okay for us, and because we judge this also for all people coming new to the field. This is the point I wanted to make.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, very important one, I think. Yeah, I think you phrased it well. And one of the issues that relates a bit to that is, I think everyone should also try to think, which conferences am I going for what purpose? I mean, I don't want to be caricatural, but in some cases you see that people just go to conferences to meet other people because it's going to be a concentration of high profile people who are going to be there, and they spend their whole time not in the sessions. And of course, this is interesting, but whether the conference is the appropriate way to do that kind of thing is something I always personally wondered. But again, it's getting a bit off topic, but I just wanted to point.
Yeah, I mean, I also tend to agree that, yeah, it is an entirely different experience, I think, virtual versus non-virtual. And I do think, I mean, whether or not the conference is an appropriate place, I mean, I think a lot of kind of the argument for it being non-virtual is on the basis of that then you have that kind of ability to more socially interact with people. I think, yeah, I don't know, maybe I'm skeptical, but I do think when it's entirely virtual, it is going to be hard to really completely replicate kind of the social side. I think for the physics, you can still definitely learn just as much, which is really good. But I think, you know, the social aspect of our conferences shouldn't be underestimated. I mean, as Jutta already said, yeah.
I don't think we're advocating to close the conferences down, but yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say I agree, and I think there's a balance, right? So like over the last few months, we've proven that these conferences can work online, so in some ways better than if they were in person. But on the other hand, there are key aspects like the social thing which are missing and which cannot really be replicated online. But is there a need to go back to having every single conference in person, or can we have one major particle physics conference each year in person and the rest of them online, for example?
And what Eluned said reminded me of that meeting where I was, where I had these strong opinions voiced. And I think one of the things that I found particularly frustrating is the idea of this virtual puritanism. Either you don't fly, don't eat meat, and are generally a holy person, or doing anything good is worthless. And I don't believe in that. I think small steps are valuable, and not flying and eating meat doesn't invalidate you're not flying, and not flying to all conferences, but only to some, does not. It's a completely sensible approach.
Can I make a quick comment on that? Sorry, I had to disconnect for a while because I had to go to another meeting. So I don't know if that was discussed, but one thing I think is when you go in person to a conference, you do not have the same expectation of keep doing everything else that you have to do in parallel. So for example, I'm having to try to juggle this and another meeting and writing a paper and all of this. And then if I say, well, but I'm attending ICHEP, they say, yeah, it's virtual, who cares? And I think that is a big issue. Sometimes if you have the opportunity to just turn off from everything else. It might even be harder to arrange, for example, daycare or arrange your family things. But once you manage to get there, you have that one time where you can just focus on what else is happening in my field. And I think one big issue is if you do one conference where everybody goes for the sake of socializing, you're going to make it even more elitistic, because coming to an ICHEP is already an elitistic enough thing, because most institutions won't pay for a student to go if they don't have a talk. And we cannot pretend that then we're going to be having institutions paying for students to go socialize it, And I think I agree with a lot of the things that are being discussing, but it's a really hard balance to strike between also being able to actually having the younger people to have the opportunity to go and socialize in person and doing all of this network, which is so important.
I agree with you completely, Flavia.
Yeah, I agree that like having travel money for young students is often an issue, and yeah, if there are these local conferences with remote access, one bad thing is that there are like participants of two categories: participants which are on site locally, and then the remote participants. And I'm not sure if it's always good. So are there suggestions about further topics to discuss?
I might have one, which is this online meeting frenzy we've been having since a while, a couple of months now. We had it before, but still I was based at CERN or when I was at an institute, you would basically still meet people to do your day-to-day work. Makes me think that, we spend a lot of time in conferences, meetings, and basically part of our work is heavily that. And one thing I was wondering is is it too much? I hear a lot of people who will say, yes, it's too much. We're hunting one meeting to the next. We try to have weekly meetings, while sometimes bi-weekly would be enough. And one of the questions I was wondering is, if you're someone that has decided to spend more time on saying, okay, I want to do something, and therefore I will not attend this meeting, because I will be busy in the lab or writing my paper or running my code or whatever, rather than trying to juggle. So one thing I was wondering is if our meeting model in the field is not also causing some lack of inclusion in a broader sense of the term, in terms of, yes, if you really want to have a different schedule than the meeting-based schedule, how can you still work in the field? I'm not saying you can't be productive. I'm just saying, like, how can we make sure that you don't miss out if you're not always in every single meeting you can be? And I know, for example, in the Atlas collaboration where I'm in, we have a lot of meetings, and sometimes we just attend to be there in case something happens, and it's not always the most productive use of time. If yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I phrase it well, but I was trying to say something.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, and maybe if I can follow on from that, I have, yeah, we have to think about also the inclusion part of it, because I have male colleagues, cis men, who who've like reached a point in their career and decided they don't have to attend all of the meetings anymore. They just go to the ones that where they want to participate, and then the rest of the time they do their physics. Whereas personally, I sometimes have a concern if I'm not in the meeting, people are going to forget that I've even contributed, and I have no evidence of that, but it's a worry of mine. And so I attend just for the FaceTime, but then it makes me less productive. And so then I have to catch up later with the work, which extends work hours, which means you're not actually as productive, you know, per hour that you're working. So I agree, but I don't have a solution.
I think it depends a lot on the conveners and on the setup of the workflow. But in general, sometimes I have experienced that like students are forced to present very, very often, and then they always show just a small progress in their analysis, and then yeah, it's also not good for the audience, since yeah, they are bored to see always the same topic. And so I think it's also good to have it like in a more interactive way. And if there is something, some problem to be solved, or there is a hope that the others can help, then people should have an opportunity to present it like soon. Some meetings.
Yeah, I wonder what you just said. I appreciate it a lot that CMS is, I believe Atlas as well, are training their conveners and giving them management training. I think this is a very good idea, and we had it here mentioned in the context of diversity and inclusion. But I think it's also just a matter of professionalization of this role, which is not easy. And one could imagine that this would help with these things to some extent, to make meetings more efficient, for example, and consider the use of time.
So any other topics to discuss, ideas? So if not, then thanks everybody again. And at least in the Central European time, is nearly time for lunch. So I enjoyed all the talks, and see you.
Yeah, thank you for the very interesting discussions.
Yeah, we are in contact, I hope. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Just mention that the diversity sessions are not quite over, as there is a diversity talk in the poster sessions coming up, which will be given by Jeanette tomorrow. And then there's the plenary talk next week, where I see Jonas has advertised for people's contributions.
Yes, I will be talking. I have a 3-minute, my poster was converted to a 3-minute 3-minute talk, so hopefully some of you can join there. It's going to be in a dark matter stream, as I am the only diversity poster. So will be interesting, as I won't necessarily be preaching to the converted as we are here. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, that sounds great. But then also the questions can be from people who don't usually talk about these events, but I'm sure you'll do great. Sorry, that I'm not meaning, I'm saying that usually the sessions when they're like, when you're talking to people who are actively interested in the, I mean, I've given outreach talks and a lot of the time I get questions, but why? Which is not the most productive discussion, but I'm sure that your talk and the discussion will be really interesting.
But sometimes it's also an opportunity to reach out to people who have not thought about it, and there are more and more. So, you know, it's.
Yeah, I didn't express it very well, but it's a good opportunity. I think it's good to talk to people who aren't directly coming to the diversity session.
Okay, so goodbye.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.
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 Bye.